Say the expulsion of former President Jacob Zuma from the ANC means that he'll no longer be celebrated as the party's past president. Zuma has 20 days in which to appeal the expulsion, which is revealed in leaked documents in the SABC's possession. The documents show that the ANC has found Zuma guilty of prejudicing his integrity after acting in collaboration with the MK party. The judgment follows a virtual disciplinary hearing last week. Political analyst Dr. Meji Makgoba says Zuma's expulsion is unconventional and could impact the legitimacy of the decision.
The ANC has mismanaged this whole Zuma issue because this is a matter that they should have resolved last year, and they took it very lightly until it cost them votes, and they are continuing to mismanage this from a crisis communication perspective, which includes that if you are handling a disciplinary case with a person, that person should be the first to receive the outcome. And if they have resorted to leaking the information to the media, then it then gives Zuma some power to even use this against them.
Agriculture Deputy Minister Zoleka Qapa is concerned about the recent incidents of veld fires that burnt and killed close to 200 sheep at Mahlungu and Zilandana villages in Qumbu in the Eastern Cape. This as they're planning to donate livestock and feed to the affected people. Qapa visited the affected residents where one of the farmers lost 84 sheep. 4 of the farmers, who lost a total of 184 sheep, are related. Qapa has called on farmers who need support to come forward.
They must then follow due processes for them to get that support. But it doesn't mean we are going to go and sit down. The department is a professional agricultural department. It is going to do its own duties within itself, because sometimes we will have to give them some sheep, some livestock. But all in all, we are in a position where we are forced to rehabilitate the very veld.
Fisogu Ntulu, accused number 5 in the Senzo Meyiwa case, has denied communicating with accused number 1, Muzisibia. 5 men are on trial at the High Court in Pretoria for the 2014 murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. Previously, cell phone data analyst Girian Gose testified that Ntuli and Sibia communicated 44 times. Management at Cape Town International Airport says that all critical systems have been restored following a power outage that affected inbound and outbound flights yesterday. Flights were unable to depart or take off as the outage affected the runway lights and the airside fire and rescue and the navigation services. AXA's Mark McLean says a total of 15 flights were affected.
Firstly, it's appropriate to just apologize to all those who were inconvenienced by the delays last night for the incident that occurred. And in terms of what caused it, we unfortunately experienced a major fault on one of our main cables on the airfield. And that fault was large enough to unfortunately cause damage to some critical infrastructure.
And 12 Libyan officials have received sentences ranging between 9 and 27 years in prison for their role in the collapse of a dam in September last year. More than 4,000 people were killed in the incident. Entire neighborhoods in the city of Derna were swept away and evacuation efforts were botched. The convicted officials were responsible for managing water resources and maintaining the dams. They were charged with crimes including negligence, premeditated murder, and wasting public money. The top story at 3 o'clock, the Western Cape High Court has found that there is no basis by which to find that an independent third party should be involved in the process of disciplining members of parliament. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
In your sports this hour, Smith happy with Olympic times ahead of finals today, and Gamondi urges Kaizer Chiefs hierarchy to get Nabi quality players. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
The Serengeti, located on the northern part of Tanzania, bordering Kenya on the north and Ngorongoro in the south. Home to the African Big Five and millions of zebras, birds and other predators. Serengeti 2 returns to the unspoiled corner of the Serengeti for more animal drama. There's humor, heartbreak, and nail-biting tension as new characters move in and familiar faces continue their stories. Channel your inner adventurer with Serengeti 2, Sundays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The incredible story is written by the classical performance of a magnificent Olympian. Josiah Tugwani painted Atlanta in the colors of Africa Bora. He took center stage and rounded off a memorable Olympics in style. Tugwani emerged victorious in a 124-man battlefield from 79 countries to claim gold in just 3 seconds. Every countryman wants a medallion. Ezekiel Sipeng delivered silver in the men's 800 meters. Marianne Creel joined the podium with a collection of bronze in the women's 100-meter backstroke. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, it's Monday afternoon, and as always happens, so much happens over the weekend. Probably the biggest thing that's happened over the weekend has got to be the suspension of the former president of the African National Congress, and that's Jacob Zuma. We'll talk about that, absolutely. We'll also talk about the Venezuelan election results that have just come through. I think in the sport bulletins, the Olympic Games must be talked about. And then there's issues around food security that we touched on the other day. We'll talk about that too. And you've also heard about, I'm sure you have, this issue of the slavery story that played out at the Pinelands High School in Cape Town. So we'll certainly cover that issue, and there's a whole lot of other issues around, in fact, talking about Cape Town as well, the mayor of Cape Town with their plans around, the homeless people and what they're doing to try and resettle them. And some people are like, yeah, thumbs up, but others clearly not so happy about that position. So we'll cover all of those things. We'll have the conversations that covers and moves the national pulse. You can join in, and I'd love it if you do just that. 0614 104 107. That's the number to WhatsApp or to text us. You can call in 086 000 2032. And by the way, talking about pictures, last week Friday, we had a flood of people from around the country posting their pictures on social media on the X platform, so tweeting it out with the hashtag The National Pulse and tagging me too, as well as on Facebook, telling us exactly where they are, but very importantly with a picture of their dial locked onto SAFM. And if you can do the same thing today, that'll be just great. I'll give you a thumbs up in advance. Wonderful if you do that. Let me, however, get to just reflect on the That's My Point issue. So we'll cover this just now as well, right? But this Pinelands High School issue is disturbing. So there's the legal process about what happened when young school children outside the classroom, grade 8s, decided to implement a slavery rule where they forcibly got all these students to be seated there and then effectively sold them off to slavery. And again, even though they had a hierarchy where the majority of those who were sold off were darker people, darker skin pigmentation. Now, let the law play its course and let other things, we'll certainly cover that issue. But I'll tell you something. We've just had far too many stories around race and racism and conscious racism and intentional racism and unconscious racism that does tell you this is not about punitive measures and punishment. Obviously, one has to do that. But the issue of restorative injustice and restoration around the consciousness of all of us as South Africans clearly appears to be lacking. And it goes back to what happened in the period building up to 1994. And I'll say this again, we've clearly missed the boat, seriously so, in having a nationwide must, and I say must attend workshop for every person in South Africa to understand what is racism, what is it to be racist, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is offensive, what is not. How do we understand what's our consciousness and our unconscious levels of racism and intolerance, and to play out what happens when we do that. And that is not the reserve of the political parties who often play up the issues of divide. So that's really my point. When are we going to go nationwide and understand this is a nationwide problem that needs to be tackled with the same vigor as we tackled the end of apartheid officially? If we don't do that, then apartheid would have ended officially in 1994. But the impact of apartheid will continue. And that's a big challenge, not just to the politicians, not just to the president, not the political parties. It's a challenge you and I and all communities that make up South Africa, including religious bodies, need to tackle head on. Nationwide anti-racism workshops for every one of us, without exception. Like how you need to get your license for your driving license. You have to do it. Well, this is the one we all have to attend. Well, that's my point. Now, what's yours?
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, feel free to comment on my That's My Point feature, particularly around what happens next with us tackling racism in the country at all levels of society. It has affected us so badly, and the fact that we still talk about it means we're nowhere near eradicating it. Not even official racism, but just racism on a day-to-day basis in our lives. So, your thoughts are at 6002032. WhatsApp right away, 0614104107. And don't forget, you can tweet out your thoughts. Just take us to, SFM Radio on the X platform. Right. We'll talk about that later. Let's talk about Venezuela now. So Nicolas Maduro has won the Venezuelan presidential election. Interestingly enough, the polls predicted that he would not win it. So he's won, he's been re-elected. What does this mean for Venezuela? What does it mean for the country? In fact, many suggesting that the country has been struggling with economic misery. So then, why re-elected? What does this mean? Professor Lyle White is the founder of Contextual Intelligence and Research and a research associate at the Brenters Foundation. Prof. White, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse. Hi.
Very good to be with you.
Thank you. Right, first of all, the significance of a re-elected Venezuelan president. What is that?
Yeah, well, Nicolas Maduro, now he obviously has been in power since 2013.
Okay, we just lost the guest as soon as we got him on the line. Let's see if we can connect with him in just a moment or so. By the way, some people I know are commenting on other issues that I will pick up on. And one of the issues has been the issues of that Libyan saga is just, oh my goodness, that story really, really puzzles you. Well, it puzzles me. It should puzzle you. Like, how do we understand fully what has happened? I mean, what are the intention of the Libyans? Why did they come to this country for training? Let's call it military training. Yes, they came in and understand they falsified the visas. That may be the easiest part. Like, how did we accept them in this country to undergo this type of training? And what's the bottom line to this? I think we connected now to Prof. Lyle White. So, Prof. White, okay, you just started talking. I was asking about the significance of Nicolas Maduro's re-election.
Yeah, sorry about that. So Nicolas Maduro, as I was mentioning, he was first elected in 2013. He was the chosen successor of Hugo Chavez, who was really the founder of this Chavismo political movement some 25 years ago. So they've had a grip on power in Venezuela for the last 25 years, and the results are quite clear. You mentioned that in your introduction, the dismal state of affairs in terms of the state of the economy in Venezuela. What this really does mean is that Maduro could be in power, or he should be in power now for the next 6 years. It's a 6-year term. And that would mean that Chavismo has really dominated politics in Venezuela for over 30 years. And the economic results are quite clear. You did also mention at the introduction that Nicolas Maduro wasn't expected to win. In fact, most of the polls actually had the opposition, which is now a united opposition in Venezuela for the first time in the last 20 years. They had them leading by some 20 percentage points at one stage. So it was quite a surprise, and there has been a major response to this so-called victory by Nicolas Maduro.
Okay, what happens next to the people of Venezuela?
So I think what happens next is the most immediate thing is, has the opposition accepted the incumbent's victory, Nicolas Maduro's victory? And the short answer is no. They actually have. They are disputing the outcome of the election. Nicolas Maduro, just for the listeners, just to get a sense of it, he has apparently won with a 51% majority of the vote, whereas the opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, he has won around 44%. It's not just the opposition in Venezuela that have rejected the outcome. It's also been the United States have issued a statement saying that there's serious concerns around this outcome, and obviously some of the political leaders, the regional leaders in Latin America, especially those that are from the same side of the ideological spectrum, they've also expressed some concern. With Gabriel Boric, who's the president of Chile, he has actually made a statement publicly saying that a Maduro victory is hard to believe. So I think this will be contested in the coming days, and what this means for Venezuelans, especially for the 5 to 6 million Venezuelans that have fled that country in the last 20 years, I don't think they're going to stand back this time. I think they've seen a united opposition. This is a time for them to really contest what they believe as an autocracy that is obviously got hold of Venezuela now.
Well, I mean, outside of the countries and leadership of those countries that has a similar ideology to the opposition as well as the USA, outside of that part, is there any evidence that the election was rigged? I mean, we've just come through an election, and there's also accusations that took place in this country. Is there evidence that it was rigged? If there's not evidence, then clearly it's time to move on, never mind what others may think, right?
Yeah, so there isn't outright evidence as such, or as yet President Maduro was likely to prevent the outcome through undemocratic means via his influence over the country's judiciary, the security services. The military, of course, is the big one in Venezuela, and even his influence over the electoral authority. He did say that if he loses, he might that it would encourage a bloodbath across Venezuela. So these are some of the threats that came about. But outright kind of evidence of an electoral rigging, there's nothing as yet. But I do think that if you took the popularity shown for the opposition in the lead, I think this will be contested by some of the election observers that visited the country. Incidentally, over the weekend, some of those observers were prevented from actually flying into Venezuela at the time, and obviously this was something that was also a flag in the lead up to the elections, which took place on Sunday.
So I asked you what happens next. So what happens next then? You know, if there's already opposition and there's a chance of contesting the election, what then do you think? How are we going to all end up here on this?
Well, the sad part about Venezuela is, apart from the dismal state of the economy, this was a country that was experiencing 1,000,000% inflation just 18 months ago. Literally, it had the poorest state of inflation in the world. So apart from that, the institutions have literally crumbled in that country. So I don't think there's any opportunity for some type of institutional backlash. The only way that they might actually oppose this is taking to the streets, which is not something uncommon in Venezuela and that we've seen before. And in such a polarized country, I do fear that there might be a major a major social backlash.
And that's where we can leave it. Prof. Lyle White from the Brenters Foundation. Appreciate your time and, very importantly, your insights as well. What do you make of what's happened in Venezuela and what's next?
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
Hi, my name is Jackie. I'm 35 years old from Pretoria and I only pay 691 Rand for my 2022 Ford EcoSport with OUTsurance Comprehensive.
What makes the best car insurer? The best price with awesome service, right? SMS out to 30754 to see if you can pay less, experience awesome service, and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted best car insurer by many publications and best car, home, and business insurer at the News 24 Awards for the past 2 years.
I am not surprised they won all the awards because in my experience they are excellent.
They walk the talk. They actually do what they say and they follow through on their promises.
SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself. Experience awesome. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Nothing beats the feeling of relaxing on your couch after a long, hard day, getting rid of those work clothes and feeling the freedom of being in your PJs. Throwing off that lace front, undoing your hair, that makeup, voila, gone. It's going to be a quiet, relaxed night. Well, not on S3. Bring a whole lot of vroom to your weeknights with Top Gear Season 16. Monday to Wednesday at 10 p.m. and Top Gear specials such as Top Gear from A to Z and Top Gear The Races. Friday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. Channel your inner vroom with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
And we will buy 500 cars and we will buy 500 more just to be the one who buys your car. Will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, let's pick out some of the voice notes we've had on the issues of racism, particularly what's come out around slavery at the Pinelands High in Cape Town.
Hey, good afternoon, Ashraf. Do you really think we need a workshop for racism or anti-racism? I don't think so. We need parents that are grown up, because these children who are still practicing this racism thing, they are inheriting them from their own parents. Something that they get taught at home. So that will be the waste of money to have those workshops. Thank you. This is Anonymous.
Okay, Anonymous. I'll tell you what, that's why we need the workshops, because if it is left to the parents, it's clearly not working. That's what I'm saying to you. So I'm actually saying the parent and the learners must, basically an entire household needs to attend the workshop. I don't mean physically where they have to come somewhere. Maybe you go to them nationwide with parents and children, like how you do a census. When you do the census, you do it with everybody. The parents' way of teaching them about racism is clearly not working. That's what I'm saying, okay? Okay, let's talk about the issue of the expelled former president of the ANC, and that is Jacob Zuma. Let's get an update on what's happened. A rather dramatic day or two with Sibatle Mota, the SABC News reporter. Sibatle, I appreciate your time. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So a lot has happened in the last 24 hours. Perhaps get us up to date with some of the key points here.
I mean, we saw a letter that was leaked just yesterday confirming that the former ANC president has been expelled. This is one of the recommendations or just what the NDC, the National Disciplinary Committee, had resolved to expel Zuma for what it says is a contravention of Rule 25,17 of the ANC Constitution. Basically saying that the former president has prejudiced the reputation and integrity of the ANC for collaborating with the Umkhonto we Party, which is a party that is not or in alliance with the ANC. So we saw that letter being leaked yesterday. We scrambled around to find out if this was indeed true, which has now been confirmed by the ANC HG Fikile Mbalula in a press briefing this afternoon.
Okay, so, and in terms of what the ANC's Secretary General has said, I mean, anything that you'd like to pick out from some of the key points that he's made now?
I mean, the section where the outcomes of the NDC had stated why former President Jacob Zuma was expelled was pretty short, just saying that he has been expelled for obviously partaking in Umkhonto Party, which saw the ANC lose massive votes, especially in KZN during the 29 May elections. But he's also saying that the former president has the right to appeal his expulsion within 21 days. So there was nothing that really stood out. We already knew where this was going for the mere fact that the former president did not appear before the NDC on two occasions where he was represented by former NEC member Tony Ngeni. So, I mean, we knew the direction that this was taking, especially the massive loss that the ANC had suffered in the 29 elections.
Okay, so I think you're right. In terms of the processes, they had no choice once they asked him to appear before a disciplinary committee in whichever form, right? I think one of the biggest issues then is what happens next in terms of how the ANC portrays him. And I understand that, and maybe you can just help me on this one, that in fact the Zuma legacy will not be reflected in the ANC history. Did they say that and explain why?
I mean, I think it points back to the fact that this is the first ANC president that has been expelled from the organization, and he has cost the party quite significantly in the past elections, as well as the party just losing and bleeding members, I mean, since his announcement. So, I mean, he did not go into as many details, but one can assume or conclude that Zuma's decision to endorse the MK party instead of the ANC in the 29 elections, I mean, it dealt the ANC a big, massive blow, and it will be quite difficult for the ANC, or challenging rather, for it to regain its former glory.
Well, I mean, that really is the big issue in terms of regaining its former glory. In terms of the media presence there, of course, you're one of them. Was there consensus that the ANC line of action is what they had to do, and they really had no choice, no matter how tricky it is? I mean, I'm just trying to think about someone walking on the tightrope. You know, either way, they had to go ahead and cross the line.
Exactly, and that's precisely it. I mean, some journalists even raising questions as to why did it take the ANC this long to actually expel the former president. I mean, one of the arguments is the fact that they were trying to save the ANC to a certain extent from this massive blow that it was dealt during the 29 May elections. And some experts have also argued that as soon as Zuma had announced his dual membership, that he is endorsing MK Party while still staying a member of the ANC, then he should have been expelled. But the ANC, obviously, with their declining support or popularity, had to choose maybe this long waiting game to see where it would take them. But I mean, we have seen at the polls, the party has been better to 40%, and yeah, the damage by Zuma and the Umkhonto party has been quite significant.
And maybe that's another whole conversation for another time in terms of the point you've just made, Sibatle, which is the ANC did not expel Zuma until after the election, and it ended up with 40%. And the MK party, it finished up with 14%. Imagine if that happened earlier. Would those numbers have changed? Think about it. It's maybe another conversation for another time. Sibatle Mota, thanks for your time. The SABC News report. To make of that issue what you will. Further comments on the issue of racism playing out in terms of a form of learners practicing and mocking a form of slavery. I mean, it's bizarre at the Pinelands High School in Cape Town. What do you make of all of that? Think about that. Let's get the news headlines now. Just go on 3:30 with Madupi.
very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, the Western Cape High Court has found that there's no basis by which to find that an independent third party should be involved in the process of disciplining members of parliament. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says that dealing with the disciplinary action of former President Jacob Zuma has not been easy, and Germany has called on all its citizens in Lebanon to leave urgently as expectations grow of a major Israeli strike on the country following Saturday's deadly rocket attack on the occupied Golan Heights. And those are your headlines. A full news update, 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 westbound in Boksburg has a crash before Atlas Road exit. The N14 northbound in Pretoria has delays towards the R101 interchange. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and Umgeni Road westbound is slow moving through Springfield Park. In the Eastern Cape, on the N6, a cash heist reported between Key Road and McLean Town. You're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the M3 southbound is queuing through Bishop's Court, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road exit, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
All right, let's talk sport. I can't get used to Tatiana Smith.
Sure.
Because he's got a nice ring, Tatiana Schoonmaker. But who am I to decide when you're in line to win a gold medal? Let's get your thoughts to me. All right.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf. Good to have you back, and also an afternoon to our listeners. We start things off with swimming, where SA swimming sensation Tatiana Smith says that she's looking to push herself even harder when she lines up in the women's 100-meter breaststrokes final tonight. Smith finished both heats and semi-finals in a leading time of 1 minute and 5 seconds yesterday.
I wouldn't say I never hold back. As you can see, like in the heats, I give it my all. In the semis, so every single race I give my best. I never try and hold back. I always try and challenge myself. So I think it's just about tomorrow's recovery day and coming back to the finals. But I'm going to prepare as well as I can, and we'll see how it goes.
Still staying with swimming, at just 20 years old, SA swimmer Peter Kutsia is looking forward to his first Olympic 100-meter backstroke final after winning a bronze medal at the World Aquatics Championships in Doha earlier this year. He's focused on keeping pressure to a minimum.
No, not a target at all. As I said, I really just wanted to make the final because you can't win a medal if you're not in the final, so that was my main goal. Tomorrow, it's just a race.
Meanwhile, still staying with Olympic news, Rafa Nadal and Novak Djokovic are battling it out one more time, this time at the Paris Olympics. And Djokovic, the last time I checked, he won the first set 6-1. They're into the second set. The pair are facing each other for a 60th time, with the Serb up 30-29 in their rivalry. Then the US figure skating team will finally receive their Beijing Olympics team event gold medal on the 7th of August in Paris, more than 2 years after the Russian teenager Kamila Valieva was found guilty of doping. Now, Valieva was found guilty of doping earlier in the season and was banned for 4 years. In football, Young Africans head coach Miguel Gamondi has urged Kaizer Chiefs to help newly appointed head coach Nasruddin Nabi by bringing in quality players. Gamondi said that his side saw his side humiliate the South African Giants 4-0 in the inaugural Toyota Cup preseason match played in front of a sold-out crowd at Free State Stadium in Bloemfontein yesterday. The Argentine, who is no stranger to SA football, having coached Mamelodi Sundowns and now the defunct Platinum Stars, says that it's not a good sign to watch a big team like Chiefs struggling because of lack of top quality players.
True, you cannot be overnight a big team. In my opinion, the expectations they're too high, because I say always in football you need players. Even Guardiola say his success is because he was in Bayern Munich and Barcelona and City. It's about the players. And in my case particular, I prefer to start in slow and building, not thinking and big, and after you become into the reality. I think today, in the tactical point of view, we gave a lesson how it is to play international games. It's not easy, but you need to have experience. And Kaiser Chiefs today, I think they put 4 or 5 young players, but you cannot expect to win a high level with young players, inexperience.
Well, still staying with football, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Manqoba Mngqithi says that the blueprint of the new technical team will soon be evident. This is after their tour of Austria this month. The Brazilians spent 3 weeks in Europe ahead of the 2024-25 season, playing 5 games. And from those 5 games, they got 2 defeats, 1 draw, and 2 wins. Then in motorsport, Lewis Hamilton has admitted that he had mixed feelings, and he expressed sympathy for teammate George Russell after inheriting victory at the Belgian Grand Prix when his Mercedes teammate's car was disqualified from the race. Russell, meanwhile, described his post-race disqualification for an underweight car as very heartbreaking. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I am Dumin Kapele.
So listen to tonight, what time should I set my alarm clock?
9:25
p.m. Is that the race?
That is the race.
So I can't be later than, like, if I miss it by a minute, it's gone, right?
Literally gone.
So 15:15 maybe.
Yeah, so just keep watching from 15:15, and we're wishing her luck.
And I mean she's the favorite.
She doesn't
clearly.
even need the luck.
Yeah.
Were you able to watch the heats?
So no, I was away, right, for a funeral in Cape Town, so I
yes.
missed quite a bit of it. But I mean, I know where she's. I know she's a finalist now, and she's well, the favorite.
It's been absolutely amazing watching her. And I think she's going to do well today. As you heard her earlier on saying, she loves to push herself, especially towards that end of that swim. Like, no one can keep up with her. So I'm looking forward to seeing her.
Tatiana, we want a gold medal. That's the bottom line. We need it.
Yeah.
Right, more sports and more gold medal talk in an hour.
Hey, want to check your TV license balance conveniently? Look no further. Our SMS service allows you to do just that. By sending a message containing your ID or TV license number to 44210, you can quickly access your balance without needing multiple inquiries or waiting on hold. Plus, standard SMS rates apply. Take advantage of this efficient method to stay informed and streamline your payment process today. T's and C's apply.
Chomi, I just hope I get auto-assessed this year so I can just accept.
You're so lazy. Remember, not everyone gets the auto-assessment notice.
I know, but I'm ready. I've got my e-filing password sorted, I've updated my details, and my IRP5 is ready.
Make tax matters priority by updating your personal and banking details and expect your auto-assessment notice from 1 to 14 July. If you disagree with your auto-assessment, file your return via e-filing. If you don't receive a notice, visit e-filing to submit your tax return from 15 July 2024. Visit sars.gov.za for more information. Your tax matters. SARS, at your service.
There will be no hiding place in the men's hockey Pool A encounter between South Africa and Germany. The African Giants and Europe's well-decorated outfit are both chasing the vital points. This is the Olympic Games Paris 2024. South Africa faces Germany on Tuesday, 30 July at 10:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport is the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
All right, let's get some of the calls. And so here's my point. Let me make it very clear what I said about the Pinelands school issue. I don't know the details, but I do know these learners, grade 8 learners, not matrics, grade 8 lighties, right? They effectively got these students together by force and effectively created this mock simulated selling off of slaves, and the basis of the of who's a slave or not was done on skin pigmentation. Now, I mean, it's a horrific story, but it's not uncommon in different ways. And all I've said to you is this, without going into the detail, it's very clear that the current ways of us dealing with racism just ain't working. Something more has to happen. And I don't mean just punishment, something more dramatic. So I've suggested nationwide workshops going to every single home in the country. If it's that important, when we have the conversation about racism and conscious and unconscious racism, then why are we not having it? And all I'm saying is, don't leave it to the political parties. It's really not their domain. This is a human domain that we need to understand. Dumisani, let's get your thoughts in KZN. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Look, I just want to underscore your point about a nationwide workshop. I think you called it that. Because I think after 1994, there are things that were supposed to happen, and a discourse on two issues in particular, the issue of race and the issue of land. And I think that we could have done ourselves a favor, but we rushed into this rainbow brand in South Africa, and then I think it's beginning to actually bite us, because I would not be surprised that, more than half of the pupils that are involved in this thing are actually taking it from homes, and they basically carry it to the school. So which then says that this could be just a microcosm of what is happening in the wider nation.
Well, I mean, that appears to be the case. So who's teaching them, who's teaching them, about racism, or rather, let me rephrase, who's teaching them racist practices that may be okay? You see, it's possible you and I may have some elements of racism in our inherent in us. It doesn't make it right, it's wrong. But it's how you articulate it publicly. That means how you practice it. Who's teaching them that it's okay to practice it? Is it radio? Is it SAFM? No. Is it the SABC? Is it other channels? Is it the politicians? Is it the schools? Is it the headmaster? Is it the teachers? Is it the religious groupings? Is it the churches, the mosques, the mandirs, the synagogues? Is it the parents? Somebody is telling them this is okay, and so we continue it. Thanks for that call. You got us thinking. Much appreciate you giving off your time, right? In fact, let's move on to another issue that's equally important in terms of politics of our country, and that's the issue we covered earlier on, the expulsion, not suspension, the expulsion of Jacob Zuma, the former president of the African National Congress, now expelled from the ANC, right? So we know that story. We've covered it just now. What do we make of it? And certainly from an ANC veterans position, Lennox Class is a member of the ANC Veterans League, right? Lennox, good chatting to you on the National Pulse. Hi.
A very good afternoon, and thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. So, Lennox, first things first, did you, as a member of the Veterans League, I mean, you'd have a different appreciation of Jacob Zuma in terms of where he started. Was this completely expected for you, or were you surprised?
Pretty much surprised, sir. Maybe let me put things in a very, very proper perspective. I'm a member of the Veterans League. I'm not the spokesperson of the league, but I'm the member of the ANC. So I have an opinion about the issue. It might not necessarily reflect the position of the African National Congress of the Veterans League. I don't want tomorrow people to say Lennox went out there and pretended to be speaking on behalf of the institution.
Okay, we got that. Go ahead, Lennox. What then do you feel on your own?
Okay, basically, I'm saying it is very, very unfortunate, sir. Any big brand like the ANC to lose a member, it's a very unfortunate thing. But it becomes even more painful when that member is not just as an individual, that member has occupied several leading positions in the ANC. Because, you see, so many people join this organization because of the work of this particular leader.
Okay, but Lennox, I hear you. Let me focus on, I don't think anybody's doubting the role that Jacob Zuma has played for many, many decades within the ANC. But, he's not judged on the basis of what he did in previous years. He's judged on the basis of now, which is he actively supported another party against the ANC in an election. Now, who does that and gets away with it?
No one does that and get away with it. That's why the ANC, I think correctly so, undertook a position that says we are going to place the former president under DC processes. The reason that happened basically because he insisted that he was still the member of the ANC. If he had joined that organization and continue operating in that organization, that would have been an automatic dismissal. Basically, he would have dismissed himself, but he did not do that. He continued telling everybody that he was still a member of the ANC. So ANC was expected to come with its processes, and it did that. And that's why so many people within the ANC were very impatient, because they felt the former president expelled himself. There was no need for these processes. But the ANC had to do this.
Okay, so now they've done what they've done, and they've expelled him. What do you feel about it?
Like I've said initially, it's an unfortunate thing to lose a member, but you will rather lose one member than to have a member that is going to work against the ANC within. Because the damage that member will do if he continues to be the member of the ANC is bigger than him as an individual leaving the ANC. I think it was good for both the ANC and the former president to part ways. But naturally, the former president has a recourse. He can appeal, but I don't think he's got better chances even to win when he goes that route.
All right. I mean, clearly he's got a few weeks to do just that. In the meantime, the ANC and Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General, spoke today, and I think my understanding now is that his record will not be reflected in ANC history. Are you surprised at that?
No, I'm not surprised. Remember, when you reflect records of the former members or current members of the ANC, all those records reflect something good. You cannot perpetuate saying all these good things about someone who's doing the opposite. So the Secretary General is correct to say we are going to do what he suggests that needs to happen. You cannot continue embracing someone who's bent on destroying you.
So let me put it this way. Let me turn this around, right? Think of a person who's a footballer, right? And is a phenomenal striker for his team, and he tops the goal scoring chance for his club, and then they win the league for 5 years running, or whatever it may be, right? Then another 5 years later, he gets found out for a doping offense, which is not linked to winning the league titles 5 years in a row, right? So you expel him for the doping offense because he's wrong for that, right? Yes. But how do you remove the fact that he was the top goal scorer for the first 5 years?
Fortunately, we are making a practical example. This has happened. Remember, the sprinter in the United States of America has literally cleaned all the competition that you can think of. And when it was discovered, in the process of her participating in these events, she had a case to answer in terms of doping. And they had to withdraw everything that she had accumulated, even the events that she claimed she accumulated clean.
Okay, so in this case, you find with Jacob Zuma's history effectively being expunged within the ANC. It won't be expunged within the government. Remember, he'll still be regarded as the former president of South Africa.
Of course, there's ANC and there's government, and ANC is governed by its policies. And if the policy of the ANC says, if you were charged, you are going to have to step aside. And then ANC is expected to make sure that that happens. That's why some people are being asked to step aside and they are resisting, but eventually they are going to have to step aside. So ANC has a position. If you do 1, 2, and 3, all what we used to sing about you will expunge, will erase. We cannot keep on singing and saying all those generous words of wisdom about you when in turn you are destroying the very organization that is saying these good things about you.
All right,
I'm
so-
sure he understands that.
Okay,
Remember, even Floyd Chivambo was the leader of the ANC Youth League, and he found himself in the similar predicament, even though he did not join the other organization. I mean, if he was found to be he acted in a very defective way in terms of the ANC policies. He was suspended for 3 years. And in the course of him serving that suspension, he joined the other organization, which is EFF. He never continued to claim that he was still the member of the ANC.
Okay, got
That's
that.
why there were never processes like these with Floyd.
All right, there we are. Let's leave it at that. Lennox Class, member of the ANC Veterans League, speaking in his personal capacity. Do you concur with the points that Lennox has made? Which parts do you agree? Which parts don't you agree? Perhaps the most significant one is not so much the outcome of Jacob Zuma being expelled. I mean, honestly, that's a given, my understanding. The bigger one is, and I need to get the wording right, at this point in time, my understanding is that his history within the ANC will not be reflected within the history of the ANC. I do find that rather puzzling. I'm just saying, I do find it puzzling. Do you find it puzzling as well? How would you reflect his history within the ANC? Not within government, within the ANC. How would you do so? Would you remove it, like just take an eraser as if nothing happened? Or would you reflect it differently? I'd love to know. You can connect with me anytime. As always, WhatsApp 0614104107 or to call 086 0002032. By the way, do tweet out those pictures I've asked you. You can also WhatsApp it with you being locked on the SFM dial, a picture of the SFM dial locked into SFM, wherever you are in the country or wherever you may be around the world, people listening on streaming live as well as, and I know that, downloading it and listening via the new SABC Plus app, a really fabulous app. Do download that. You can listen to the show very, very clearly. I'll take your calls in a moment.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, so I want your calls, I want your comments on many of the issues, particularly on the issue of how do we deal with racism. And what sparked off this conversation is the issue of, a slavery scene being played out, not drama. This is learners effectively forcing other learners to be part of it. And that demarcation was done on the basis of skin pigmentation. Olivia in Abeja. Hi, Olivia. Go ahead.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you. Your point?
I want to talk about all three, the two racism cases and then the 95 Libyan nationals.
All right, go ahead, yeah.
In the cases of the youth, basically they are all youth. They see things from a just very different perspective. They see the world differently. I am a mother, so I know. So let us wait until we have heard from their representation or their representatives how this all came about. I think we're going to have a totally different picture then. Because children are not as racist as we think. My kids often remind me that we are the ones holding on to racism. When I say we, it's the class of 1976. That's me.
So if I have to guess, and I know we're both guessing, right? You say you think the results will reflect very, very different outcome, right? What do you think they will say?
I think in the case of the kids at with the cage thingy, it would probably have just been playfully done. And I think in the case of the girls at Pretoria, at the school in Pretoria, could be that they have just highlighted something that was on their chest, like sometimes on mine at my workplace, where I am excluded from certain things, certain events, and only black girls are allowed. And there's also cases, I am on the equity committee, and I have spoken about it often. And then also sometimes when things are allowed for them, it's almost like there's a euphemism when they do things.
Okay, excepting I hear some of the, you see, I do understand, they can reenact a scene, right? You can do that.
Yes,
yes. But I understand in this case, and if I'm wrong, somebody must correct me. I've certainly seen a parent go on camera and say her son was, they attempted to forcibly get the son to participate and he escaped them. And then there were others who were effectively abducted to be part of this, let's call this play that was carried out. I mean, so that's very different from a volunteer.
Until we hear from them,
yeah,
the children. And in the case of the 95 Libyans, I want to say, right. I hope that they have very good representation as well, because you will know. In 1974, our ANC, our APLA, and our Lesotho Liberation Army was all trained in Libya. Our cousins are married to Libyans. That is how small Africa is. And imagine when it was our brothers who were in Libya getting training from Muammar Gaddafi, and they were treated this way. I think what's happening today is just what Libya and Muammar Gaddafi has been paying forward those years.
So but remember, Gaddafi lost power, then was killed, right? And there's another whole debate about that and the role of the USA in that. But that's another conversation. But so we're not talking about a bilateral arrangement payback between Gaddafi and South Africa, are we?
No, what I'm trying to say is that they are here, as I understand, on study visas. Let's see where the case goes, what comes out. Let's hear their version. Of why they are here, before we label them as terrorists and Hamas and all kinds of names that was already thrown around. I've listened to Sakina's show where the police representative was speaking, and there was no facts. There was absolutely no facts yet. So let's wait, and then we can say, we do not want these people here because I would give anything for my son to get training, to learn about security here in South Africa or anywhere in the world, and know what to do in cases, because there's so much of global disasters now. In cases of evacuation, crowd control, what to do when something goes wrong.
All right.
Those are the things that they learn.
Olivia, let's leave it at that. Parts of it I just agree, parts I disagree. I agree about the point about labeling them is completely out of line because we have no facts whatsoever. What we can say is what are they doing in the country, and until that's explained, then there's going to be suspicion about what they're doing and who's colluding with them to do something. So I hear that. But your other issue about racism as well, you certainly got us all thinking, and therefore, I think every day I'm going to do this. When someone makes a call in that really gets me thinking beyond the obvious, and I need to give them applause. So I'm going to give that to you. Probably try and do this all the time whenever that applies. Olivia, appreciate your call, and that's what we want, okay? Agree, disagree, that's less important than the fact that we talking, because we reflect the national pulse every single day on the show. And I want you to be a reflection of the national pulse as well. Now, we'll get to some of the other callers too. Now, there's a flood of voice notes, also in terms of suggestions around racism and how do we deal with it, right? And I certainly want to know about it. And then Terence from Pretoria, like your picture, listening in from the office, Terence. Nice one. And I can see that very clear, SFM locked on the dial. I certainly need to get Vusani to post that on our social media platforms. With your permission, it'll be great if we do that. More to come on the show. Let's get first things first. It's 4 o'clock. It's the news with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. The top stories at 4, judgment in the EFF Sona case and a legal setback for AKA murder accused in Eswatini. A very good afternoon. The Western Cape High Court has found that there is no basis by which to find that an independent third party should be involved in the process of disciplining members of parliament. This comes after EFF leader Julius Malema and other senior MPs turned to the court to invalidate their suspension, as well as the National Assembly rules which guide how members of parliament are disciplined, arguing that it is vulnerable to majoritarian abuse. The EFF leaders were suspended without pay for 30 days after they were found guilty of contempt of parliament for storming the 2023 SONA by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Kenny Mapanga has more.
The EFF contended that an independent person, such as a senior legal practitioner or judge, should conduct the fact-finding inquiry into MPs who were charged with contempt prior to the National Assembly, considering disciplinary action against a member. The full bench, however, dismissed this argument, citing that it never got out of the legal starting blocks. The application was subsequently dismissed. Kenny Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
ANC SG Fikile Mbalula says dealing with the disciplinary action of former President Jacob Zuma has not been easy. He was speaking at an ANC press briefing at Luthuli House this afternoon, where he confirmed that the party has resolved to expel Zuma from the ANC. Zuma has been found guilty of contravening the ANC constitution for acting in collaboration with the MK party. Mbalula says Zuma has impugned the ANC's integrity.
Dealing with the Jacob Zuma matter has not been an easy one in terms of how normally you deal with people who behave like him as members of the ANC, who choose to leave the party and then form a political party and work against the party openly and decampaign the party. That's what Jacob Zuma has done. So under normal circumstances, we should have just said, he's gone, he's gone.
The Manzini Magistrates Court in Eswatini has dismissed the application by the defense to postpone the extradition application of Siyabonga and Malusindi Mande for oral arguments on safety-related issues. They allege that they had to skip South Africa due to taxi violence that claimed the lives of some of their relatives. Dismissing the application, the court said that the defense failed to provide evidence to substantiate the claims that Malusi was at a boarding school or at a hospital when rapper Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Tebello Motswane were killed. Magistrate David Kumalo ordered the state and the defense to immediately continue with the main extradition.
I've already pointed out that the respondents came here knowing that the matter was coming up for arguments on the main extradition matter. Now, their legal representatives, as practitioners, should have known that in the event the court will dismiss these points, will proceed to the arguments on the main matter.
Women and children's rights groups in Mthwalume on the KZN South Coast say they are fighting a losing battle against gender-based violence. They voiced their anger outside the Umzumbe Magistrates Court, where a 17-year-old boy appeared on the rape and murder charges of 2 girls. Rights organization Women of Umthwalume's Bongi Jobe voiced her frustration.
I don't think we will win this battle. We are getting new cases daily. We are doing campaigns in the community, but there is no difference. Women and children are killed. We sometimes have camps with men, teaching them what is expected from them. But these attacks on women and children are reported every day.
Police say they are following up on leads in their manhunt for 15 heavily armed robbers who robbed a jewelry store at the Phoenix Plaza in the north of Durban. The robbers made off with jewelry and cash. This after they opened fire on the police officers and security guards before fleeing in 3 vehicles. A police officer and a passerby were wounded during the shooting. And Germany has called on all its citizens in Lebanon to leave urgently as expectations grow of a major Israeli strike on the country following Saturday's deadly rocket attack on the occupied Golan Heights. Israel blames Lebanon's Hezbollah for the attack, which killed 12 young people, an accusation denied by the group. Tensions have been growing in anticipation of Israeli retaliation. More from the BBC's Hugo Bachega.
There is an anxious wait here, and I think this is the situation all across the country because there were no major developments overnight. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty about what might happen, places that might be hit in Lebanon. I think the assumption is that this Israeli response needs to be big, needs to be significant, but at the same time it needs to be measured to try to avoid putting Hezbollah in a position where they feel under pressure to respond.
The top story, the Western Cape High Court has found that there is no basis by which to find that an independent third party should be involved in the process of disciplining members of parliament. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhaleme.
In your sports this hour, Heatherly claims bronze in cycling for South Africa at the Olympics, and swimming training cancelled for second day after Sen water quality and current problems. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange, and the N14 northbound in Pretoria has delays towards the R101 interchange. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and Umgeni Road westbound is slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N1 inbound has a crash reported on the link to the R300 highway. All lanes are open, and Victoria Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
South Africa's often been accused, at least for the better part of the last 20 years, of being a country that loses investment opportunity because of policy uncertainty.
I think it's important to state what we've always stated, which is that transformation is not an act of charity. It's not a donation or gift to black people. It is an imperative in this country to address the historic injustices in this country and ensure that black people are able to have equitable access to economic opportunities. But it's also in the interest of the economy, because in fact, if you broaden the base of entrepreneurs in this country, you're creating better competitiveness. You don't have a limited number of entrepreneurs, but you broaden the base of entrepreneurs that are able to contribute towards economic prosperity and job creation.
The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Baxter.
Night Talk, Monday to Thursdays, 10 to midnight. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
The second half, or the second hour of three, not half, second third of 3/3 of the show, the National Pulse. Glad that you're a part of it. To the people who are posting, pictures of them being locked onto the SFM dial, like a big thumbs up to you. You can also watch us, streaming live in video. So if you tune in now, you'll see me right away. It's a crazy world. It's not just radio as you know it any longer. But thanks for that. People tweeting out, people posting on Facebook, as well as those who are sending it via WhatsApp. You can do all of those. 0614 104 107. I'll give you a shout out if you give us a shout out, something like that. 086 000 2032. Raise some of the biggest issues that we have. We should be chatting to Professor Jonathan Jansen shortly on the issue of racism, picking up what has happened around Pinelands High School. And that call from Olivia is very, very interesting indeed. But there's many further thoughts on that issue. So let's pick up on that issue of racism with some of the callers that have sent us WhatsApp voice notes.
Hi, Ashraf. Racism is a disease. And the way you deal with racism, you have to figure out how to deal with a patient. You don't fight with a patient when they are sick. You help them to heal this. And in this instance, it's clear that this racism is a disease that is also contagious to those that are close to you. So as South Africans, how do we take an approach that heals these people who are sick? I don't think fighting will help. I think we have to figure out how to heal.
Well, you see, there you are. I mean, I hear your point about healing, and that is why I'm saying to you, it can't just be about, criminalizing it. I'm not saying don't, but there has to be another way, because this ain't working. Here's another comment on racism.
Hi, SAFM. Hi, Ashraf and the SAFM. I don't understand this thing of racism. I'm asking myself that what is the matter about it if maybe the person doesn't agree with you, he doesn't want to associate himself with you. We the blacks, we everywhere. The tribalism is the worst things whereby like the Zulu people, they keep on insulting each other, killing, fighting, the other tribe. So I don't know why we keep on complaining about the whites all the time. If they're making a little mistake, then we over them, all of us, and then we publish it.
I really don't know what you mean by that. I mean, I'm just trying to think now. Why are we complaining about the whites? You're not complaining about any white people. You're complaining about an action. When the action is unconstitutional to start with, and then you can bring up all the other issues about cultural differences and other nuances and the impact that it has on people who are bearing the brunt of acts of racism. Do we then just ignore it? Like, it's okay. Call people what you want. Just treat them the way you want. You think about that one. So let's talk more about this issue, not just Pinelands High, but just the broader issue. And the issue we've thrown up is, in terms of the dealing or the healing with racism, I don't quite have all the answers. Perhaps Professor Jonathan Jansen has. He's a professor of education at the University of Stellenbosch. Prof. Jansen, good chatting to you once again. Hi.
Hello there.
Thanks for your time, man. So we're speaking to you specifically because I know you had to deal with an issue, not similar, but the issue of racism at the University of Free State a good few years ago, right? What did you learn from that experience, firstly?
Well, first of all, not to be surprised when it happens. We are very often unreasonable as South Africans and think that turning off racism is like switching on your light and switching it off at night, It's not like that. These things are institutionalized. They're built into the fabric of our society, and they're built into our institutions, whether those be schools, universities, churches, mosques, the like. So when it happens, one is obviously deeply disappointed, but not surprised, because did we really think that 350 years of colonialism and apartheid is simply going to vanish before our eyes? So changing the laws, as we now know, doesn't mean that you are changing the behavior of citizens, and least of all children who carry over, into their own lives the stuff they hear at home, the stuff they hear among their friends, the bigotry, etc. So saddened but not surprised.
So we've been having this conversation about what influences our thought processes in the cases of racism. Is it listening to radio? Is it TV? Is it the mass media? Is it social media? Is it the school? Is it the parents? Is it the colleagues at school? what influences our thought processes the most in understanding this is right, wrong? I've actually left out religious organizations too in that conversation. But you tell me, what do you think?
Yeah, I wrote a book about this, of course, called Knowledge in the Blood. And the answer to your question is all of those things, right? And you are lucky if you're in a home where parents condemn racism out of hand every time it rears its ugly head. But as we know, not a lot of our children grow up in homes where, I often use the example, you're traveling home with your dad in his car after school and a taxi driver, cuts in front of you. The dad is unlikely to say, "Sir, did your brakes fail?" The dad is going to say some pretty ugly things. And sitting in the back seat of their car as kids will begin to think this is normative, right? So multiply that 1,000 times here in the Christian community in which I have grown up. When vicious attacks or slander of Muslim friends of mine, I obviously, react immediately. But a child doesn't have those defenses, and so you hear what your father says about gay people. You hear what your mother says about, white or black people, and you begin to imbibe that nonsense. The snide comment of a teacher, even, in the classroom. So children are exposed, and you, as I said, you're lucky if your social structures have countervailing forces. In other words, people saying the opposite. People who shut down a bigot. Take xenophobia. I mean, I sat in a barber the other day and this person was sort of saying, the foreign nationals are responsible for dirt, accumulating in the township. Now, if I don't speak up, there's agreement on that rubbish.
Yeah.
But I speak up. And so unfortunately, schools are simply one of those institutions that more likely reinforce bigotry than challenge it.
So your point is telling, if you don't speak up, then there's agreement on that statement, yeah?
Immediately.
Okay.
Immediately.
What is your understanding of what's happened at Pinelands High? Because it's racism, I understand, played out in the form of slavery.
Yeah, look, I haven't sort of dug deep into this, but I know that the school suspended the learners, after the slave auction, where apparently black African kids were sort of being sold off by colored kids and so on. I mean, what kind of madness is that? There is in the grade 10 curriculum actually a segment on the slave history at the Cape, for example. If you have alpha brain, you know that this was an institution that degraded people, not just here, but the South Atlantic, all over the world. So it is deeply saddened that these kids at a fairly well-established high school, Pinelands High School, that has done very well, by the way, on integrating learners, could have this episode. But I'll tell you this much: if you remember the hair episodes at St. Lucia and Pretoria Girls.
At Pretoria High, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it can happen anywhere, and that is why schools have assemblies, and I say to principals, use every assembly to remind the kids, what you stand for when it comes to racism, sexism, xenophobia, and the like.
And do you think kids don't know that? What I'm saying is you get the parent. So let's just say, for argument's sake, you get an outwardly racist parent who, in his daily vent, I'm thinking about from Pinelands, passing Athlone, going all the way down to the V&A waterfront experiences and has these outbursts. And the child hears it and doesn't rebut it because it's the parent. But does the counter not get reinforced when that same child goes to school, by the principal, by the headmaster, by the school textbooks that he or she reads every single day? Don't you think they get it, that my parent is racist, but I'm not going to follow his nonsense?
Yeah, I mean, if there are these sort of these counter forces, right? These other experiences, the counter experiences, then that child is lucky. Okay, when, however, a teacher, a peer group, a rugby coach, a parent all say the same thing, especially with younger children, it begins to settle in their minds as true, and then you're in deep danger. Okay, and I think too often we put the responsibility on the school to solve all of these other institutions and their contribution. to racism, for example, etc. You can't solve it. I listen to some of my colleagues talking nonsense like just put a module in the curriculum. The curriculum doesn't solve this. This is solved by the behavior, the interactional behaviors between people in the school, outside the school, and that is why as leaders, myself as a leader in universities, myself as a leader in my home, myself as a leader in the community, it behoves me and every other leader to constantly say, this is what we stand for, and there are consequences.
That's a good point. Let's wrap up as we on to the next interview. Here's the last thing. So based upon or drawing on your experience from the University of Free State, right, what advice then would you give the school, and what advice would you give the country in whether it's healing this issue of racism, particularly in schools? But we're going to wrap up, so a quick answer on that one. Yeah.
Oh, very, very easy for the school, which is use this as an opportunity to address the issue more broadly. Don't try and hide the story. Put it out there. Have workshops. Speak in assemblies. Call the parents. But use this as an opportunity to reclaim decency in the school, to say what is wrong and what you stand for. But don't. This is the unfortunate behavior of many institutions. When something bad happens, you try to just sort of bed down and cover it up. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't say it never happened. Prof. Jonathan Jansen, appreciate your giving of your time. Prof of Education at the University of Stellenbosch.
Channel more reasons to feel encouraged on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3, as Councillor Sadia Southgate shares how mental health support helps us see a brighter day. Making sense of food labels gets us eating right. Chef Dumi and Jay make a whipped feta and grilled lamb flatbread. That's Afternoon Express, this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Here he comes. Hello, guys. You're so dramatic. Hey, Bo, it's not me. It's the extra styling kit. The leather seats with the red finish. It's the tow bar, all coming standard with my red Isuzu badge. Wow, now that is extra.
Why be standard when you can get the all-new Isuzu D-Max X-Rider from just 8,742 Rand. Prime less 3.5%, 0% deposit, 40% balloon, and 72 months to pay. Get yours today. Finance is subject to approval. Isuzu Finance, a product of Westbank, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
It's going to be a hot women's hockey battle between South Africa and Great Britain in Pool B. Mzansi Africa's plans are to fight hard from the first whistle to the end. But their opponents, GBR, believe they will deliver a touch of great class. This is the Olympic Games Paris 2024. South Africa tackles Great Britain on Wednesday, 31 July at 10:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport is the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, further comments on, particularly if you'd like to comment on the back of what Professor Jonathan Jansen said about, dealing and healing with issues of racism and certainly not sweeping it under the carpet, but have ongoing conversations and workshops, by the way. Certainly feel free to add your comments. We'll take your calls as soon as we can. You can also WhatsApp, and also if you want to sort of fast forward the calls, just tweet it out, okay? Hashtag the National Pulse, and then you can tag SAFM Radio, and you can certainly tag me, Ashraf Garda, on the X platform. Right, so this is a disturbing issue, considering that was in Cape Town, as you may know, for the better part of the whole of last week with atrocious weather. 1 or 2 sunny days, but certainly Saturday was the most miserable, and I believe Sunday was just as bad. I then find out that there were air traffic delays at the Cape Town International Airport last night due to a power outage, and the outage was so severe, it actually forced flights to be diverted. Now, the airport's company of South Africa has been giving regular updates on the matter. So what's the matter, and how have they dealt with it? Mark McLean is the regional manager for the Cape Town International Airport cluster. Mark, I'm glad I'm in Joburg now. Thank goodness, otherwise I'd be still stuck in Cape Town. Hi.
Hello. Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Thank you for your time. Right. What has happened?
Yeah, so I think first off the bat, Ashraf, it's important for me just to say, apologies for everybody who was inconvenienced by the delays last night. So what happened was that just after 8 o'clock, we experienced a fault on one of our main cables on our airfield network, electrical network, and that unfortunately brought down part of our electrical network on the airfield, and it impacted some of our runway lighting and our navigational aids.
And that's the issue. So it's not linked to the bad weather that I've alluded to as well.
No, it wasn't. It was an isolated fault on one of the cable sections on the airfield. Unfortunately, the fault was large enough to cause a cascading effect where, multiple equipment failed, and that's what triggered a longer restoration time than, is normal.
Okay, what impact did that have then on, air travelers?
So we had enough lighting systems available for flights to depart. But unfortunately, when the incident happened, a lot of flights were inbound into Cape Town International. And about 4 flights, a total of 15 flights, in fact, had to divert to alternate airports, mostly Oliver Tambo, King Shaka, and Chief David Steedman. And they then, not all 15 diverted. Some of them just stayed on the ground, until they received confirmation that the situation was resolved. And 4 did not return to the airport, but 11 of the 15 then returned to the airport later the evening. In fact, we still had flights landing early this morning until about 4 o'clock.
Oh, my goodness. Morning. Okay, so to confirm, it's not so much outbound flights from Cape Town as someone like myself, but it was actually inbound from other places that either got delayed or diverted, right?
That's correct. So we had enough systems available, to depart flights safely, but unfortunately, the systems that were impacted were some of the landing systems. And, so we felt, the industry felt that there were not enough systems available for safe landing. And that's why we needed to restore before the aircraft could come back to the airport.
How then do you deal with it? Because I would think that when these commuters, these air travel commuters finally land, well, we don't even know what they're thinking in the planes, but when they finally land, they are furious. They are blaming the world for their problems. How do you deal with that when you finally meet them face to face?
Yeah, so when they landed, I think the most important thing is to try not to delay, the passengers any further. So, one of the key things we try and do is that when they land is to get them off the aircraft, try and get their bags to them as swiftly as possible. And what we also did is to allow people to exit the parking without any further, delay or inconvenience. So those are some of the things that we try to do. But in the main, Ashraf, our goal is always to try and eventually get every passenger to his or her destination and to work with the airlines to make sure that everybody can reach their destination safely.
And I take it that they are now where they should be, right?
Yeah, so we had, with the 4 flights that, didn't come back to Cape Town, we still have it's KLM and a flight from Maputo. Some of the passengers will come in tonight and tomorrow. But all of the other passengers on the 11 flights and those on the other 2 that were diverted have already come back to the airport. And as the day progresses, the airlines obviously catch up time, and the schedule is largely returned to normal.
Okay, just lastly, how do you prevent this happening again? I mean, you don't want this.
Yeah, so you can imagine the engineers are actually still out on the airfield working to, firstly investigate the root cause of the issue. We certainly will do a whole review of our whole airfield network just to understand whether we can install additional systems to prevent this from repeating itself, and perhaps even more redundancy. We've got uninterruptible supplies, we've got generators, we've got dual electrical systems. So we already have, world-class systems in place, but we certainly are busy looking at what more we can do.
And of course, the safety issue is a really important issue. So it's a point well taken. Mark McLean, thanks for your time. Regional Manager of Cape Town International Airport Cluster. As you know now, out of the flights, 11? 4 of them did not land. They were diverted and have not yet come back. They may well come back to Cape Town today because of effectively being a case of lights out. Let's get the news headlines now. It's just gone for 30 years, Majupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, Asawa, the Gauteng Education Department is urging the public to respect the disciplinary proceedings scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday at Pretoria High School for Girls in Tshwane. The state in the Senzo Meyiwa trial intends to bring an application to recall cell phone data analyst Lamberta Steyn to the witness stand, and student activists in Bangladesh have called for new street protests after the government ignored an ultimatum to release their leaders and apologize for hundreds of deaths during recent unrest. And those are your headlines. A full news update, 5 o'clock.
SAFM.
Good afternoon.
Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N1 southbound in Midrand has a lost load reported before Buccleuch Interchange, and the N14 northbound in Pretoria has delays towards the R101 interchange. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 in Escourt has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions near the Faro exit, and the M13 eastbound in Pinetown has roadworks with traffic restrictions reported at the N3 Paradise Valley interchange. In the Eastern Cape, on the N6, a cash heist reported between Key Road and McLean Town, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. And in Cape Town, Leesburg Parkway southbound in Observatory is slow moving towards the N2 highway. Campground Road in Newlands is slow moving between Main Road and Palmyra Road, and Chapman's Peak Drive is closed due to rockfalls. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
I have a sense we're going to lead with the Olympic Games like all through the next almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Go
There's
ahead.
no other way. Let's start off with cycling from the Olympic side of things. Alan Heatherley clinched South Africa's second medal of the Games after taking bronze in the men's Olympics mountain bike, with Great Britain's Tom Pidcock winning gold. Heatherley made history by becoming the first ever South African and Southern Hemisphere rider to win an Olympic bronze medal in mountain biking. So as things stand, South Africa has 2 medals. We are 22nd on the medal table, with China topping that table with 9 medals, 5 golds, 2 silvers and 2 bronzes. And still staying with the Olympic news, 2008 champion Rafa Nadal has crashed out of the Olympics men's singles in the second round after going down 6-1, 6-4 to number 1 seed Novak Djokovic. In football lovers will be able to watch the live broadcast of Mamelodi Sundowns ladies matches in the Women's Cup in the ISA next month. This is after the tournament organizers clinched a deal with the SABC, which will see Sundowns ladies face host Kansas City Current on the 15th of August, and that game is at 3 a.m. And here's Women's Cup President John Reynolds.
This is what the Women's Cup allows. It allows for all these clubs to meet against each other, and then with a global audience, because the matches are broadcast all over Europe on The Zone and all over the United States this year on Vizio Watch Free Plus, and in Latin America on DirecTV. And by the way, another scoop, we cut a deal with SABC, and they'll be broadcasting all the live games of the Sundown ladies live in South Africa. So all this means that there's great visibility, and that's what the Women's Cup is all about.
Elsewhere, Manchester United's owners hope to make a final decision on whether to spend more than £2 billion on a new 100,000-seat stadium by the end of 2024. United co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe wants to build a Wembley of the North for the side, and together with Trafford Council has put together a task force to assess the feasibility of a new stadium and redevelopment at Old Trafford. Club sources confirmed that the task force has already met 4 times, with the discussion largely centered around a new build rather than renovating the existing stadium, which costs around 1.2 billion and takes longer to complete. And it has been stressed that no decision has been made as yet. In triathlon news, pollution in the River Seine has forced the cancellation of today's swimming training for Olympic triathletes in Paris. This is the second successive day training that has been cancelled after yesterday's familiarization session was called off for the same reason. A statement issued by Paris 2024 and World Triathlon says that tests have shown that the water quality was still below an acceptable standard, and the organizations wanted to reiterate the priority is that there is health, or that it is the health of the athletes. Then in cricket, Sri Lanka captain Shamari says that years of sacrifice had finally paid off after they beat 7-time champions India by 8 wickets yesterday to win the Women's T20 Asia Cup for the first time. India, who had beaten Sri Lanka 5 times in previous finals, including the first 4 editions when the tournament was played in the 50-over format, posted 165 for 6 after deciding to bat first. In reply, Sri Lanka started off on a flying start, 87-run partnership with Hashita for the second wicket. However, they got over the line with 8 balls to spare at 167 for 2. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I am Dumin Kapela.
I have to ask you this because, we were, I was away in Cape Town, so we never saw each other face to face, although we did a show from there.
Yes.
What's your take on our what's it called? Olympic uniform? Olympic kit? What's your take on? There's been so much conversation about it.
There has been a lot of conversation about it. I think first and foremost, I'm grateful that the uniform fits them.
However, okay. That didn't happen before, right?
Yep, they had oversized uniforms, but I think it's okay. It's not wow, but it's okay.
You think it's just okay?
Yeah.
Which is a nice way to say it's not okay.
No, I'm not saying it's not okay. Don't put words into my mouth.
Right. It's okay. I think it's not okay. I like the jacket. I think the problem is...
Are you talking about the opening ceremony?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm talking about the opening ceremony.
It's okay.
Yeah. It's okay. I like the jacket. I think the what's it, khaki sort of colour is fine. I think the problem is they've got different people wearing, with this male and female wearing different colour pants, and that somehow looks a bit silly. And they could have dolled up the jacket a bit better. I think a few years ago they had sort of a zebra braiding and it looks stunning.
Did you like that?
Yes.
Really?
The braid part.
The zebra looking...
Maybe you need to show it to me again. So maybe I'll say...
Sure.
No, maybe I got it wrong.
Listen,
okay.
I can tell you the best that I felt was good looking in terms of the nations.
Yeah.
Haiti. That was fashionable.
I saw the Mozambique one as well. Also very impressive.
Sure.
I just saw that too. Well, I mean, tell me, what do you think? We're talking about the opening ceremonies, the outfits that South Africa wore at the opening ceremony. What do you make of it? Now, the bigger issue is like, don't make bigger fuss about that. If they win a medal, great. But I mean, we are talking about lifestyle, okay? Did they look cool or not so cool in the outfits they wore? On the boat, remember that? They were not running, they were on the boat. We'll talk about that. Right, more sport from you in an hour. With the zebra print, let me have a look at it. Maybe I'll change my mind.
The world's best cooking show is finally here. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, noma uphumaphi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. only on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, the world's best cooking show, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
High emotions and tension will prevail from the early moments of the contest between Spain and South Africa in the men's Pool A. The Europeans want to add the sound of a Spanish guitar in their game plan, but the African stars from Mzansi refuse to drop their heads. This is the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Spain battles it out with South Africa on Wednesday, 31 July at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport is the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to those facts and figures with Makwe Masilelo, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good chatting to you as always. So we're going to have global and local markets coming up. But first of all, interesting news regarding Pan-African resources, right?
Yes, afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to the listeners. Remember, Pan-African is a mid-type gold producer with one of the highest margins and low cost. The production is up 6.2%. The guys achieved a record average gold price of 2,021 US dollars an ounce at an exchange rate of 1871 rands to the US dollar, and with their all-in sustaining cost of $1,350 an ounce. And market participants begin the week desperate for answers to questions about the near-term path of global monetary policy. That's after conflicting signals from key economies upended markets, and major central banks are set to meet in Tokyo and Washington on Wednesday and London on Thursday, with traders struggling to decide if the Bank of Japan will hike interest rates, and then when and by how much the US will move, and whether the Bank of England will cut. Also in the spotlight will be the Friday's US job reports, and more big tech earnings results are coming through. And then we've seen locally, we expect the July PMI, which will give us an insight into the economic activity in the third quarter. In June, PMI stayed weak, and still on Thursday we'll get our July new vehicle sales. Sales have been declining, Ashraf. Oil prices are up as fears of an escalating Middle East conflict couldn't be offset by demand concerns. Brent crude is up 0.4% at $80, and the yellow metal recovered some ground from a rout seen through July as focus turned to US central bank meeting with expectations to get more clues on interest rate cuts. Gold is up 0.2% at $2,390, platinum up 1.7% at $952, and when it comes to the market, it's more of a mixed picture. DAX down 0.2%, FTSE up 0.5%, CAC down 0.8%, the Dow is down 0.2%, S&P is up 0.2%, the JC is up 0.1%, with our resources up 0.3%, industrials up 0.2%, but our financials are down 0.3%. The rand has weakened over 1% versus the US dollar is now at 18.49, 23.73 to the pound and 19.99 to the euro.
Okay, that's it. Great. We will chat tomorrow. Makwe, as always, we'll have another update from the markets coming up in an hour's time. Do not miss that. By the way, some other important news. We'll be chatting to the representative from the ANC's spokesperson, talking to us at 5:10 regarding the Zuma matter and today's press conference. We'll take further calls as well on a range of issues that we've asked you to talk about. Whatever you think moves the national pulse. I mean, daily. In fact, when I met Lorenzo Davids in Cape Town on Friday, when he was a guest on the show, and he said, Ashraf, don't stop asking that question. What moves the national pulse? Because that changes every day, but it certainly forces you and I to reflect on our consciousness about what it is. So the question to you is then, what for you today moves the national pulse, right? Okay, let's get some calls on some of the big issues, and we'll take WhatsApp voice notes as well after this.
The National Pulse.
The big question right now is what impact has it had on the morale of the former president? We certainly heard him say fight 3 times. And what impact does it have on the morale of the Republican Party and Americans in general?
Well, certainly there's going to be a rallying effect around Donald Trump in the short term. The fact that he was able to stand up as quickly as he did and, put his fist in the air, those are very strong images. And they come at a time where there have been a lot of questions about Joe Biden and his resilience and strength and so forth. So we'll see a rallying around Trump in the short term. The timing of this around the convention obviously speaks to that as well. What it means for 2 months or 4 months down the road, I just don't think we know yet.
Doug Hay is a former communications director for the Republican National Committee.
The National Pulse, weekdays,
3 to 6 p.m. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Well, not only do we ask you what moves the National Pulse daily, we also know that different people have different interpretations and reflections of what it is and certain things that they want to get off their chest. And often I agree with a guest or caller and he makes me or she makes me think, and other times I disagree. Mark from KZN is saying something I must repeat it. He says, Mark or Garda, you really love winding up the racism issue. It makes me sick to my gut. Enough already. So you see, Mark, your point is exactly what many people say. I've even heard it from some of the schools when the issues of racism surfaces. They always blame the media for then giving it the prominence it doesn't deserve. The reality is, if there was no racism to talk about, what is there would be talking about? We're talking about Olympic Games. You know, if there was nothing, if there was no slave auction, we wouldn't be talking about it. So this thing about me winding it up, I'd love to know what you think I should be doing. Like, keep quiet about it? In fact, I'm asking questions. Yes, I'm giving some of my own thoughts, but more than the thoughts, in terms of responsibly carrying the conversation forward, we're asking questions and we're all trying to find answers. If this platform is about keeping quiet and let the world continue like it is when it's so wrong, then we've got it all wrong. And I certainly don't want to be a part of that sort of error. Right, further comments via WhatsApp. And again, love the fact that people are WhatsApping as well as on Twitter, posting pictures of they being locked to the SFM dial. Just love those. So let's get further thoughts. Here's another one. There's comments about Zuma on the Jacob Zuma issue.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and your team. Flores here from the Western Cape. Ashraf, I think the ANC has dealt itself a huge blow. The whole Jacob Zuma saga could have been dealt with last year already, when they learned of him backing another party. And then again, they're not consistent in when it comes to expulsions and all those sort of things. Supra, as well as Dlamini Zuma, voted with the opposition against the president. Were they expelled? No. So where do you draw the line? Have a great show. Bye-bye.
I got that. I think that one's a bit more complex. They voted against the president, but they didn't actually campaign against the party. There is a difference there. But maybe, just maybe, and I don't know, I'm not part of the ANC in the structures at all. Do you sense a change? I mean, Zizi Kodwa, for example, he's not a sports minister any longer. He's not an MP any longer. Something has changed within the ANC that is certainly worth reflecting on. Here's another comment on racism.
Hi, SAFM. Hi, Ashraf and the SAFM. You know, I don't understand this thing of racism. I'm asking myself that what is the matter about it if maybe the person doesn't agree with you, he doesn't want to associate himself with you. We the blacks, we everywhere. You know, the tribalism is the worst things whereby like the Zulu people, they keep on insulting each other, killing, fighting, the other tribe. So I don't know why we keep on complaining about the whites all the time. If they're making a little mistake, then we over them, all of us, and then we publish it.
Okay, I think we've raised that issue before from the same person, and maybe we just played it twice, but, does he have a point about the issue of tribalism? Is there a difference between tribalism or nationalism and racism? And I think here's the other point. You can enjoy the company of a person from your ilk, but you can't. See, what you can't do is discriminate against another. You cannot not talk or greet a person differently because they look different. That's really the issue, isn't it? Rocky in East London, hello.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you, Rocky.
I'm in my late 50s, and I think anybody in his late 50s grew up in apartheid era. And
Rocky, I'm so sorry. Rocky, I'd love you to have delivered your knockout punch, but your line is just horrible. So I can't hear you. Try and call back if you can. I'll take your call as soon as you can, okay? Certainly want to know what you have to say because your views, I think, are important, right? Let's get to Lynn in Kimberley. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you, Lynn.
Yes, thank you. You too.
Ashraf, just regarding your stance on racism, I don't know if I'm wrong, but I have not heard you say one word about anti-Semitism. Nothing. Deafening silence from Terry Oakley-Smith, all your people, the Human Rights Council. There have been many anti-Semitic tropes, and I haven't heard
From me?
one word.
Has the joke been from me? Sorry? Has the
I beg
joke
your
been
pardon?
Has the joke been from me?
Not joke, trope.
Okay. Has it been from me?
No, but I haven't heard you say anything against it.
Well, listen, let me put it this way, and this is my quick take on it. Anything that discriminates against people on the basis of their race is wrong. Anything. So maybe that's your answer. Whether you want to put a further label on it, whether you want to put a further label on it, right, that's a different conversation. But the broad international point about anything or anyone that discriminates against another on the basis of their race, that's wrong. Okay? Hopefully you got that.
Hang on, Ashraf. No. What about on the basis of their religion, on the basis of
It's the same thing. I just said that.
Reality?
Okay, race, religion, creed, tribe. We've spoken about tribalism. All those things ultimately, and the key word is discriminate. If you're discriminating purely because that person is that, not discriminating for any other reason, that's wrong. Hopefully you've got that. Lynn, thank you for that. All right. Well, there you are. I mean, I think that's pretty clear to me. I'm sure he is. Right, further thoughts, comments on some of the other issues we've raised and maybe other issues we have not raised, because we certainly want to move the conversation that truly does matter.
Bridget Masinga.
And now we're almost comparing apples to oranges, and you go, hey, but Siri said this is a red sign. And now you take it and you put it in your relationship and you go, hey, actually Siri was right, this is a red sign. Kanti, maybe in your relationship you're taking it out of context of a situation.
You've nailed it. And when you're saying apples to oranges, at least they're fruit. You find sometimes we're comparing apples to cabbages, and just because they're both green does not mean they work. The problem with social media lately is the standards are too high, and we don't know who sets these standards, and we've got all these different people on social media that think life works according to their definitions or their standards or even their expectations.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, so don't forget we'll have another take on the ANC's position regarding Jacob Zuma coming up after the news at 5. Listen out for that, right? Now, the installation of the state-of-the-art Da Vinci 11, I understand, surgical robot at the Busamad Private Hospital in Gateway showcases, it comes up, in fact, on Wednesday, showcases a milestone in South African healthcare. It's the very first surgical robot in the KwaZulu-Natal region. So let's find out more about what that means with Imran Sumra from Ease South Africa. Imran, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf. Good to be here.
Thank you. Tell me more about what does a surgical robot do? What can it and can it not do?
So I guess let me take a step back. So Ease is the enabler in this case. We bring into the country advanced pieces of medical equipment on an innovative basis, which I guess we'll talk about. But this robot, and the reason why it's so significant, is that it's a significantly high-tech piece of equipment. It essentially is a device that sits over the patient. It has 4 robotic arms, and opposed to the surgeon standing over the patient, he or she sits at a device and has access to these 4 arms, and is able to improve sight, dexterity, insight into what's happening in the patient. And so the advances and the outcomes are significantly improved from a patient point of view.
And I suppose that's the big issue, isn't it? What can we do to improve the lives and experiences of patients?
Correct. And so this machine has been used globally for some time now. There are 11 in the country. This would be the first in KZN. And essentially, there's a strong focus towards reducing the cost of healthcare, right? There's the whole debate with NHI and whether it can be implemented or not. But this would be one of the ways of doing that, to reduce length of stay, to reduce patient recovery, improve turnaround times. All of these things lend themselves to improving the cost of healthcare. And our model has enabled bringing in this very expensive piece of equipment at a very low capital outlay.
So how would this change things, in terms of the presence of a surgical robot versus the absence of a surgical robot for a person who needs it?
So one, it just enhances the outcomes using, technology. So as I said, the console enables the surgeon to look 10 times magnification into the patient. You have greater control, greater precision around some of the procedures. And look, I'm not a clinician, so the clinicians can talk to this better. But certainly, the outcomes proven from a statistical point of view is that you have less blood loss, reduced length of stay, and greater patient recovery. So typically, you're seeing yourself walk out of these procedures in some instances, whereas in the past there'd be some recovery time.
You're saying, it's being used already abroad, and the header talks about it, the first of its type in KZN. Is it the first in KZN or the first in South Africa?
No, it's the first in KZN. So it's been used elsewhere in the country. The robot itself is manufactured out in the US. There are 7,000 odd of these robots already being used globally. So this is not entirely new technology, but it's the first for the KZN region. And why we're particularly proud is because is essentially an equipment as a service offering. We allow medical institutions like Busamed to forego the high capital cost of these pieces of equipment. These robots typically range anywhere between 35 to 45 million rands. And so, they don't have to incur that significant upfront cost. Utilizing our model, they're able to access these machines on a more regular basis.
And let me understand this practically. In terms of the usage, therefore, would it reside, and again, forgive our naivety because we just don't know, would it be residing in sort of in a permanent place, or is it for hire, meaning is it mobile?
Look, the machine itself is relatively mobile, but typically it's designated to a particular site. So this one would be used solely and exclusively by Busamed Gateway Hospital. And typically our model works on that basis. We would identify a site that would have a need for these pieces of equipment and then enter into a partnership with them whereby we essentially share in the risk based on what kind of volumes and what kind of patients we can attract.
And around like 40 million rand that you spoke about, is that something that you pay for, or as you've suggested, you sort of share in the risk factor with the hospital?
Well, essentially, that's if you are buying this on your own, that's the capital cost that you would incur up front. And then in addition to that, you've got to pay for the insurance, for the maintenance, everything you need to keep the machine available when your surgeons need it. We take all of that off your plate, so to speak, and provide you with access to this on a usage basis. Now, globally, the healthcare sector has already seen a shift in this regard. Technological changes, innovation challenges, all of these have lent themselves to greater usage and rental of equipment as opposed to ownership. So in the US, for example, 4 out of every 10 machines are now rented. In parts of Europe, 35%. Parts of Asia, 25 to 30%. South Africa is lagging significantly behind. And so this, I guess, for me, is a first step towards starting to shift towards the way the world is going in terms of equipment utilization.
It's interesting to say South Africa's lag behind. You'd think, especially in a developing country, first choice would be to rent and second choice would be complete ownership. It's sort of flipped around here, right?
Exactly. Look, I think we still have this mentality of we must own everything that we use, right? And it's not just, to be fair, it's not just a South African thing. We're finding that philosophy is still quite imprinted in the way things are done throughout the African continent. And we are starting to see now a gradual shift, or as you've rightfully pointed out, most sectors that utilize equipment, whether it's in construction or mining or healthcare, understand that leasing of equipment or renting of equipment is actually the more beneficial way to go. And healthcare is starting to see that shift. In SA, we're getting there. Most of the big hospital groups, emerging radiology practices, etc., who we're talking to understand the concept. But it's early days and we're starting to see very positive traction.
Okay, perfect. Let's leave it at that, and best wishes with this this robotic element that's come into our lives and certainly changes things, I would think, for the better. Imran Sumra, CEO of Ease Holdings. That's fascinating. And there's more of that, I think, with advanced technology that will change things. Talking about the Da Vinci 11 surgical robot. Here's a quick comment from Brian Mabai. I think it's very relevant, Brian, saying, Ashraf, kindly get students to call into your show about the experience of racism, either side of the fence, both the victims and the perpetrators of side of the story, how they relate with it and how they feel as students. We as parents have had ours say. Well, okay, here's a challenge, not just regarding the issue of Pinelands, but anywhere else. Any school, wherever you may be, have you been a victim of racism? Have you been a perpetrator of racism? And upon that now reflected upon it. And you want to share it. It could be you, it could be your children, it could be you directly as younger people. Either way, I think we need to know. Greg House is manning the news desk. It's 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. Disciplinary proceedings at Pretoria High School for Girls and a call for new protests in Bangladesh. Good day to you. The Gauteng Education Department is urging the public to respect the disciplinary proceedings scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday at Pretoria High School for Girls. The proceedings follow the suspension of 12 learners linked to a controversial WhatsApp group allegedly containing racial slurs and complaints about black students. Department spokesperson Steve Mabona.
It's a critical time for high schools, as it were. We are starting with our examinations, so it's quite important that we must respect the space and give children an opportunity to be educated. We know the community is concerned. There's many stakeholders that are concerned about what is happening at the school, but we discourage any, destabilization of the process. Let's not disturb the school. The school must, continue without any hindrance.
The Western Cape High Court has found that there's no basis by which to find that an independent third party should be involved in the process of disciplining MPs. This comes after the EFF leader Julius Malema and other MPs turned to the court to invalidate their suspension, as well as the National Assembly rules which guide how MPs are disciplined. Malema and 5 other senior party MPs were suspended without pay for 30 days after they were found guilty of contempt of Parliament in a disciplinary process by the Powers and Privileges Committee after storming the State of the Nation addressed by the President in 2023. Kani Mapanga reports.
The EFF contended that an independent person, such as a senior legal practitioner or judge, should conduct the fact-finding inquiry into MPs who were charged with contempt prior to the National Assembly, considering disciplinary action against a member. The full bench, however, dismissed this argument, citing that it never got out of the legal starting blocks. The application was subsequently dismissed. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The trial of 8 members of the Presidential Protection Unit who allegedly assaulted 3 people on the N1 freeway last year has been adjourned until tomorrow in the Randburg Magistrates Court in Gauteng. This is to allow the defence enough time to present video footage that allegedly shows one of the victims removing beer bottles from the vehicle they were travelling in. The defence of the 8 police officers responsible for the protection of the Deputy President have argued that the video before court is incomplete. The defence is trying to put it to the first witness that they were under the influence of alcohol when the incident occurred. The NPA's Pindium John Ndwane.
The trial is ongoing. Our first witness is still on the stand under cross-examination from the defence. Tomorrow, the court will deal with the video that the defence says they have in their possession, which the defence says is an extension of what the state has provided to the court. So we'll await that process.
The state in the Senzo Maua trial intends to bring an application to recall cell phone data analyst Lambertus Steyn to the witness stand. 5 men are on trial at the High Court in Pretoria for the 2014 murder of the Bafana player. Maua was shot and killed while at Kelly Kumalo's parental home in Vosloorus on Gauteng's East Rand. Steyn previously testified that Kelly Kumalo was in communication with one of the accused prior to the murder. State Prosecutor George Baloyi.
We intend to bring an application for one witness to be recalled, and that's Lieutenant Colonel Steyn, just to clarify certain aspects that came up in the cross-examination of this witness. Colonel Steyn is currently receiving medical attention, and he might not be available this week and possibly only early next week.
Siyabonga and Malusi Ndamande, accused of being involved in the murder of Kiernan aka Forbes and Tabelo Mutswane, will know their fate next month. This after the Manzini Magistrates Court in Eswatini postponed the matter to the 16th of August for judgment. Earlier today, the presiding magistrate ruled that the main extradition application should proceed. Student activists in Bangladesh have called for new street protests after the government ignored an ultimatum to release their leaders and apologise for hundreds of deaths during recent unrest. The BBC's Anbarasan Erhirajan has more.
There is a massive crackdown on protesters and students by the Bangladeshi authorities, and people are being rounded up, taken into custody, and local media reports say more than 9,000 people have been taken by police and various security agencies. Now, the student leaders, they are demanding the release of their representatives, and they're also calling for the universities and schools to be reopened soon.
Top story, the Gauteng Education Department is urging the public to respect the disciplinary proceedings scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday at Pretoria High School for Girls. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Close.
Sauer Heatherly claims bronze in cycling for South Africa at the Olympics, and Nadal crashes out of Olympics with a loss to Djokovic. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N14 westbound in Diepsloot has a crash reported after the R114 Diepsloot exit. The N12 westbound has a crash on the link to the N1 north at Diepkloof interchange. Beyersnodea Drive northbound in Melville is slow moving towards Thomas Bowler Street. Heidelberg Road southbound in City Deep is slow moving at Howard Road. The N1 southbound in Midrand has a lost load reported before Buccleuch interchange, and Allendale Road eastbound in Cloakop has delays towards Mastiff Road. In KZN, the N2 southbound is slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 in Escort has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions near the Farrer exit. Cassia Road in Hillcrest has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions between the M13 and N3 highways. In Cape Town, the N2 at Siloa's Pass has misty conditions reported with poor visibility over the pass, so you're asked to proceed with caution. Montague Drive southbound is queuing towards Bosmansdam Road. Albert Road outbound in Woodstock is queuing towards Voortrekker Road, and Brighton Road in Kraaifontein is slow moving at the N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Channel more reasons to feel encouraged on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3, as Councillor Sadia Southgate shares how mental health support helps us see a brighter day. Making sense of food labels gets us eating right. Chef Dumi and Jay make a whipped feta and grilled lamb flatbread. That's Afternoon Express, this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Attention ladies, join us on Saturday, August 17th, 2024 for the Star Choice is Yours Women's Day event at Altitude Fourways, a day dedicated to empowerment, inspiration and transformation. Engage with dynamic speakers, attend interactive conversations and connect with amazing women just like you. The event will be hosted by the fabulous Unatingai. Don't miss out on this opportunity to celebrate and elevate yourself. Get your tickets now at www.quicket.co.za for 550 Rand, drinks, food and a gift bag included. Plus, stand a chance to win an honor product. This incredible event is powered by independent media and the Honor 200 series.
From 1936 to the future, from Ekaya, Ekas, to Jozi and Urkan to the world, from dance and poetry to stages filled with our hopes and dreams, from SABC radio stations to cross-border triumphs, from drama, comedy and heart-pounding sport to raise our flag, from culture and spirit to the streets where talent is grown, from generation to generations and the shows that kept us entertained. So, what are you waiting for? Kumbule Kaya, SABC SABC has always been home to our joy, stories, and Msanti's magic. Come home to SABC Plus, still home to the best of who we are.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So we'll chat to the ANC spokesperson. We should have chatted to him now. We've shifted things around. We should chat to him around 5:45. We should be chatting to the mayor of the city of Cape Town, Jordan Hill-Lewis. The plan A was around 10 to 6. We may shift that and bring that forward earlier to shortly. Around their plans now that they've officially opened the city's 300-bed safe space shelter to help more homeless people off the streets in central Cape Town. That comes up shortly, and if you have any thoughts on that, let me know. Also, that point that was brought up earlier from Brian, I think it was, who said that, maybe get the young people themselves to comment about what's it like being the victims of racism and what's it like being a perpetrator. If you want to be anonymous, that's fine too. Now, earlier on, Terry Oakley-Smith and Seth Mazibuko were on the Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. You know that, the show from 9 to 12. Well, Terry spoke to Kathy about racism in schools, the issue we've chatted about regarding Pinelands, and you can talk about the Pretoria High School for Girls as well. And she asked if people, think we are going to, she was asked whether we would get it right. And this is what she said.
I just wonder, Kathy, do people think that we're just going to get it right about race by doing nothing? By just letting the years go by and saying, 30 years have gone by since we had democracy. So how come there's still racism? Well, there's still racism because we've really done very little to actually end it. If I look at this school, and if we use Pretoria Girls High for a start, I want to ask them, what did they do? They said they did diversity. What did that mean? Diversity is a very, very broad stroke. It means that you, first of all, look at the school very carefully. You run a series of sessions. You call in the SGB. You work very carefully with them. Maybe you mentor the headmistress or the headmaster. It's not something that can be done and dusted in a sort of half a day. It's an ongoing process. And I think that there hasn't been that kind of ongoing process at all. It's very distressing to think that, I know we're all welcome to have WhatsApp group with our friends, but I think it says a lot about Pretoria Girls High that 12 girls, all white, would form part of a WhatsApp group. And again, it makes me question what actually has been done in that school to address the ongoing culture, if anything at all. And I think that's quite, that's quite distressing, and it shows how little's been done. I personally find the situation of the coloured pupils auctioning off their black colleagues even worse somehow. It goes beyond microaggressions. In Pretoria Girls High, there were complaints about how the uniform policy was being implemented. But to actually be auctioning off and assigning sums of money to people based on their race is very serious racist behaviour, in my view. I don't know what Seth thinks.
Okay, that's the thoughts of Terry Oakley-Smith from Diversity. Then earlier on, we spoke to Professor Jonathan Jansen. Remember, he's at Stellenbosch University now, but earlier on, he was the Vice Chancellor at the University of Free State when there was this big issue around racism, and he dealt with it at that stage. Well, I asked him again to refer to the issue of dealing with racism, and this is what he said.
Yeah, if there are these sort of these counter forces, right? These other experiences, the counter experiences, then that child is lucky. Okay, when, however, a teacher, a peer group, a rugby coach, a parent all say the same thing, especially with younger children, it begins to settle in their minds as true, and then you're in deep danger. Okay, and I think too often we put the responsibility on the school to solve all of these other institutions and their contribution. to racism, for example, etc. So you can't solve it. I listen to some of my colleagues talking nonsense, like just put a module in the curriculum. The curriculum doesn't solve this, This is solved by the behavior, the interactional behaviors between people in the school, outside the school, and that is why, as leaders, myself as a leader in universities, myself as a leader in my home, myself as a leader in the community, it behooves me and every other leader to constantly say, this is what we stand for, and there are consequences.
That's a good point. Let's wrap up as we on to the next interview. Here's the last thing. So based upon or drawing on your experience from the University of Free State, right, what advice then would you give the school, and what advice would you give the country in whether it's healing this issue of racism, particularly in schools? But we're going to wrap up, so a quick answer on that one. Yeah.
Oh, very, very easy for the school, which is use this as an opportunity to address the issue more broadly. Don't try and hide the story. Put it out there. Have workshops. Speak in assemblies. Call the parents. But use this as an opportunity to reclaim decency in the school, to say what is wrong and what you stand for. But don't. This is the unfortunate behavior of many institutions. When something bad happens, you try to just sort of bed down and cover it up. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't say it never happened. Okay, so that's another thought from Jonathan Jansen. By the way, that conversation with Jonathan Jansen, we'll have it up. It's ready as a full podcast. Listen to that. Go to SAFM Radio, you'll find it. But also, not just listening on radio as you would know it. There's you can catch on streaming audio or streaming live, but also download the new SABC Plus app, and do it now, which allows you to listen in even when you're not listening on the radio to the show. And I can tell you now the quality is just absolute magic. Earlier on, regarding the Jacob Zuma issue, the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula said that Jacob Zuma's demands to have the NDC, that's a National Disciplinary Committee, heard in public was a stunt.
Jacob Zuma wanted a movie in front of Lutulia House and so on, and he wanted this hearing to be public. That's what he wanted. Now, you can't go to court and they tell you that you are going to conduct your hearing virtually, and you say, no, I'm not coming. And I want it to be in this fashion and that fashion. The most important thing, if you've got integrity and you've got cogent arguments that you have not contravened the rules of the ANC as you have been charged under in terms of the Constitution, you can argue anywhere. It's not an issue where you argue, but we are not there. That's what he wanted. He wanted a movie, he wanted this thing to play itself out, he wanted a rally. Even when they were told that the disciplinary hearing is virtual, they still came here. And they knew that there's no DC at Lutulia House. So they still came here. So it tells you that Jacob Zuma wanted a movie.
Okay, he wanted a movie. Now, we know that yesterday the news broke that, in fact, he was expelled. The ANC didn't formally announce it until today. So for those of you who have followed the career of Jacob Zuma, then as the president of the African National Congress, then as the president of the country on behalf of the African National Congress, and now part of the MK party, who, as you know, is the MK member, also campaigned against the ANC in this election, then the reality that at some stage he was going to be expelled, well, this is the formal pronouncement.
ANC versus Zuma. Following a disciplinary hearing, the matter of the ANC versus Jacob Zuma was heard on the 23rd July 2024 on a virtual platform. The National Disciplinary Committee made the following finding in respect of Mr. Zuma on the 28th of July 2024. The National Disciplinary Committee finds that the charged member is found guilty of contravening Rule 25.17.17.4 of the ANC Constitution, read with subsection 2, for prejudicing the integrity or repute of the organization by acting in collaboration with a registered political party to which the Umkhonto weSizwe party, which is not in alliance with the ANC, in a manner contrary to the aims, policies and objectives of the African National Congress. The charged member is expelled from the ANC. The charged member has the right to appeal to the National Disciplinary Committee of Appeal within 21 days. The final verdict being, I quote, the charged member is expelled from the African National Congress. The charged member has the right to appeal to the National Disciplinary Committee of Appeal within 21 days.
So there's a range of issues you can talk about, and also Venezuela, if you wish to pick up on that issue, but many other parts of the world, whatever it is, around the world, in South Africa, on the African continent, issues that for you moves the national pulse or drives it, then I'd like to hear from you. So you can call into 086 000 2032, WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. You can also post comments on our Facebook page as well as on Twitter or the X platform. And of course, those that have sent pictures about being locked in, the dial being locked into SAFM wherever you are. Well, that's just great that you've done that. Keep them coming as well. I'd love to give you a shout out when I see them. Let's get your calls in a moment.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, let's get some of your calls. To Germiston we go. That's east of the city of Joburg. Kibiki on the line. Hello.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, we haven't spoken before, so I don't think so.
From 10 now, yeah.
Well,
yeah, we have spoken a month ago, actually.
All right, well, yeah, welcome back. Good to talk to you. Go ahead.
How are you?
I'm good indeed. Right, what do you want to get off your chest?
Ashraf, I've got two issues to talk about. Firstly, it's a short one on the question of racism about the schools. You know, in life, we all, even if we are children, we all have a choice. I mean, our parents cannot enforce what they believe in on us. Children have a choice. That is what I want to say on that one. Because if your father, let's say your father is a gangster, you cannot say I'm inheriting the gangsterism in me, from my father and I'm going to be a gangster.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, there are many examples of that where people are gangsters, and then the children take on a completely different role. People have a certain belief, their children take another role. I mean, we can think of, there's hundreds of examples. So you're right. You're spot on.
Yes.
They need to learn on their own. I mean, but it doesn't mean that parents can't influence you, because they do have an influence on us. We all have an influence
But you have a choice at the end of the day.
Well, there you are. Okay, anything else?
And then the other thing is that of Jacob Zuma being expelled from the ANC.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a problem of Jacob Zuma being expelled from the ANC. I have a problem with the expungement of the history of Jacob Zuma within the ANC. This reminds me of, the old apartheid government. They expunged Professor Robert Sobukwe's history, the writings, the speeches. They expunged them from the history. Today we are searching all over to look for those things. We cannot get them. So now the ANC tells us that they operate just like the apartheid government.
But I don't know if that's true. I mean, how would you deal with a former president of your party who's now campaigning, so basically playing for another party. So think of if you're playing rugby, the player plays for the Stormers and then mid-season he moves on to the Sharks. How would you deal with that person?
Ashraf, I like the example that you are talking about of playing of a rugby player. Players are moving around every day. Let me give you an example of Mbappe. Mbappe was playing for that team in France, isn't it?
Paris Saint-Germain, yeah. But then he got transferred.
He's going to Real Madrid. He's going to Real Madrid.
Yeah.
History will always link Mbappe with Paris Saint-Germain. That's where he started.
Well, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
If they say they expand Jacob Zuma, in 2014, 13 or 10, the Sunday Times ran an article that says, it was like a clock that depicts ANC's president.
Okay.
And Jacob Zuma was president number 12. It fit the clock, Now,
okay.
Are they going to expand that?
Well, I agree. Okay, I need to move on, Kibiki. I hear that. Well, I mean, that's my point. I agree with you that if they say they don't reflect him in the history of the ANC, that's crazy, as if it never existed. So then that means the ANC were not in government all that period? We never had a president at that time? Basically what you do is to do both. You have to reflect his role as the president, and you also have to reflect his role where he was in prison, and you have to reflect his role when he got expelled as well. You have to reflect all of that, because that all represents the part of the ANC. Can you do it any other way? I don't think so. Bramoro, let's get your thoughts on Bloemfontein. Hello.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Go ahead. Your point?
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, the ANC needs to exercise precaution in dealing with the ex-president. They can expel him, but expunging his record activities from the party. So are we saying that the ANC is going to erase it from even Wikipedia, that the ANC had a gentleman called Jacob Zuma, who was the leader of the ANC for at least 9 solid years? We need to review that. Secondly, Ashraf, there are many things that is happening in the world that we cannot refute that. The Ghana Black Stars, for example, had a previous coach, Kwesi Appiah, who is now the national coach of Sudan national team. Mm-hmm. He is also a GFA member, a member of the Ghana Football Association. And surprisingly, Ghana is going to meet Sudan in the World Cup qualification. You understand? So you ask yourself, so how are you going to deal with such? Are you going to fire the Ghana gentleman who is part of the FA, but now a coach of a different country national team, or because he's not a national head coach of Ghana Black Stars? This is the situation that the ANC is finding itself in it. Nevertheless, the issue of racism should be dealt with precaution. I wish the human rights can all involve themselves in it. South Africa is probably the only country in Africa that has a reconciliation day. Hence, we need to protect the democracy in this country and the unity. And any child or any parent who is involved with any racist activities should be dealt with. I wish the school final findings will be expelling all the kids involved from school and probably banned from attending any school in the country for at least 2 or 3 years. That should be enough to serve as deterrent to others, regardless of the repercussion. No one should come and tell us that these are innocent kids or their future is at stake. They should have thought of the crime that they committed, to draw human beings, put them in a cage, and auction them. Even we adults, we will never bother doing such a thing. How much more learners whom we think or portray them to be future leaders? They should have thought better. So the hazard sentence should be melted on them.
Okay.
AfriForum should all involve themselves in such cases for us to have the rightful judgment. Otherwise, keep enjoying your show.
Well, much appreciated. Thank you so much. Well, there you are. Interesting comment about AfriForum at the very end of your conversation with me. Thanks for that, Bramoro. We'll talk in tomorrow, right? Owen and George, hi.
Hi, Ashraf. I come from a very mixed family. I'm classified as colored, but I'm very light skinned. Okay. Even in my own family, there's lots of racism. Mm-hmm. Who you marry, how the people look, how their hair is, and things like that. Mm-hmm. But fast forward, I worked for parastatals, right? Mm-hmm. I worked with the Sassels, the Petro SAs, and all those companies And I experienced in the 80s, right, a lot of racism. I mean, we had separate toilets, we had to use, and I objected a lot. And for example, I was interrogated by management for a whole day. Why I don't want to serve on a committee, which is based on race, a colored committee, and Indian committee, and you have a white committee. But I think in the 90s, 94 afterwards, a lot of companies instituted diversity training, and which was very hard for white people, right? Having a black woman come and giving them training about how they, should interact with other races and things like that. But I think a lot of companies were stupid to not do diversity training, right? I use the word stupid. But fast forward, I think Mandela government wanted the churches, the religious leaders, to institute a model regeneration for our country. But religious leaders rejected because they didn't want to do model regeneration on the government's terms. They wanted to do it on their own religious terms. And I think that is where we have failed in this last 30 years. And we are seeing the results now.
Okay, well, I need to leave it there because we're on to news time, Owen. But thanks for your call and your comments. And there you are. I mean, I think you're right. There's this hierarchy of racism even within families who are all termed one race and then based upon skin color, because we are victims of being totally mind manipulated over decades, but it doesn't mean we mustn't fight it. We must fight it. And it's an important point that you bring up, right? Let's get the news headlines now. It's just gone 5:30 with Greg Hose.
A look at the headlines. The Gauteng Education Department is urging the public to respect the disciplinary proceedings set for tomorrow and Wednesday at Pretoria High School for Girls. Police in the northwest have arrested 6 suspects in connection with a recent shooting incident in Kanana Township near Orkney and Freedom Park in Rustenburg. And there have been calls from the international community for transparency after the opposition in Venezuela rejected the outcome of yesterday's presidential poll. A full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The M1 northbound in Melrose has a crash near Colette Drive. The N3 southbound in Alexandra is queuing towards London Road. The N14 westbound has a crash reported after the R114 Diepsloot exit. The N1 northbound in Midrand is slow moving towards Samrand Road, and Eskom Patleli Drive northbound has delays towards Mabopane Highway in Pretoria. In KZN, the M1 Higginson Highway eastbound in Chatsworth has protest action reported near the Shallcross Road exit. The road's blocked and that's queuing traffic in the area. The N2 outbound is slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction. Umhlanga Rocks Drive is slow moving between Sunningdale and Glen Hills, and Chris Hani Road westbound is queuing at the N2 highway. In the Eastern Cape on the N6, there's a cash heist reported between K Road and McLean Town, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Ottery Road exit. Jan Smuts Drive southbound is queuing towards Klipfontein Road. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the N7 Jakes Harville Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
Right, Chamio, I didn't call you the Minister of Sport today, so what is the Minister going to talk about now on another Olympic day?
Well, we're still ranting and raving about Alan Hatherley, who clinched South Africa's second medal of the Games after taking bronze in the men's Olympics mountain bike, with Great Britain's Tom Pettick winning gold. Hatherley made history by becoming the first ever South African and Southern Hemisphere rider to win an Olympic bronze medal in mountain biking. Now, as things stand, South Africa has 2 medals and are 22nd on the medal table, with China top of the table with 9 medals, 5 golds, 2 silver and 2 bronzes. On our side, we have 2 bronzes. Then moving on to swimming at the Olympics, SA's swimming sensation Tatiana Smith says that she's looking to push herself even harder when she lines up in in the women's 100-meter breaststrokes final. Smith finished both heats and semi-finals in a leading time of 1 minute and 5 seconds, and that final tonight is around 9:20.
I wouldn't say I never hold back. As you can see, like in the heats, I give it my all. In the semis, so every single race I give my best. I never try and hold back. I always try and challenge myself. And yeah, so I think it's just about tomorrow's recovery day and coming back to the finals. But I'm going to prepare as well as I can, and we'll see how it goes.
Wishing her nothing but the best for today, but she's not the only South African that is in a final at just 20 years old. SA's swimmer Peter Kutze says that he's looking forward to his first Olympic Games 100-meter backstroke, after winning a bronze medal at the World Aquatics Championships in Doha earlier this year. He says that he's focused on keeping pressure to a minimum.
No, not a target at all. As I said, I really just wanted to make the final. Because you can't win a medal if you're not in the final, so that was my main goal. Tomorrow, it's just a race.
Staying with the swimming news, Great Britain swimmer Adam Peaty has tested positive for COVID-19. This is just a day after winning silver in the Olympics men's 100-meter breaststrokes. Then pollution in the River Seine has forced the cancellation of today's swimming training for Olympic triathletes in Paris. This is the second successive day training that has been cancelled after yesterday's familiarization session was called off for the same reason. A statement issued by Paris 2024 and World Triathlon said that tests had shown the water quality was still below an acceptable standard, and that the organizations wanted to reiterate that the priority is the health of the athletes. Now, the men's triathlon is due to start tomorrow, and should the water quality not reach the required standard on race day, the triathlon events have two contingency dates, one on the 1st and the other on the 2nd of August, built into the program as a whole. Then just ending things off, the U.S. figure skating team will finally receive the Beijing Olympics team event gold medal on the 7th of August in Paris. This is more than 2 years after Russian teenager Kamila Valieva was found guilty of doping. Now, she was found guilty of doping earlier in the season and was banned for 4 years. Do you remember that story?
Just remind me, because I don't.
So she was a teenager. She actually won gold, and then there was a whole situation with her testing positive, and she didn't even know. And there was a suspicion that perhaps she was given something that had a substance that was not supposed to be included in her stuff because she's young. Unfortunately, she did lose that medal.
It's so tricky. I mean, look, obviously there are dopers who do it intentionally in terms of, gaining the extra
Especially
advantage.
when you think about Russia.
Yeah.
Remember, there was a whole scandal with regards to doping as a whole.
Yeah, and that was even with their gymnasts and others, it was like organized plans to effectively manufacture, in inverted commas, athletes who are able to deliver gold for their country. Yeah.
It's always sad. Well, with that said, it's a wrap from my side. Wishing Tatiana and Peter's great swim this evening. I'm sure we're going to get more medals come this evening. With that said,
right, great. That's it. We'll talk more sport tomorrow after we celebrate Tatiana's win.
Channel more reasons to feel encouraged on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3, as Councillor Sadia Southgate shares how mental health support helps us see a brighter day. Making sense of food labels gets us eating right. Chef Dumi and Jay make a whipped feta and grilled lamb flatbread. That's Afternoon Express, this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
From 1952 in Helsinki to 1996 in Atlanta, Penny Haynes makes history 44 years later. The sensational swimmer ended the long wait with victory in the women's 100-meter breaststroke.
Haynes tried to hold Beard off again. She did it in the 100. Can she do it in the 200?
Champions always want more, especially at the Olympic Games. Haynes was not content with just one gold. She scooped the second in the women's 200-meter breaststroke in a brand new Olympic record.
Haynes will win gold for the second time, an Olympic record time.
Magical moments of the Olympic Games. Brought Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
So Monday after the weekend, then the money matters really do make a difference. For the MoneyWeb market update, as always, here's Jimmy Moyanga. Hi, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm pretty well. Been away to Cape Town, as you may be aware, for an entire week. So it's a new world back in Joburg.
Definitely a different. The two cities move at a very different pace.
Well, Cape Town was storming and has continued storming, and you've got chilly weather in Joburg, but blue skies. What a pleasure.
Well, we're glad to have you back. The show today, though, we've got a couple of interesting points to look at that you've missed out on while you've been away. It looks as though the team at Transnet and the Special Investigating Unit are taking Nedbank to court over 2.8 billion rand. We're going to speak to the SIU around that. We've reached out to Nedbank as well. We've got a statement from them, so we're going to look at that case and see what's going on there. It looks as though it relates to matters from about 9 years ago. And then we've got a conversation with 91 around the latest conversation that's been happening at the G20. The G20 leaders met over the last week, and there are some pronouncements or some initiatives going forward around transition into clean energy, and we've got a conversation with the sustainability officer at 91 around that. It looks as though there's massive commitments to the tune of just shy of 7.5 billion rand that have been made in that respect. Then we've got a conversation with cash converters around their business. They seem to be doing some interesting things in the second-hand jewelry market, but also in the franchising space, and we're going to speak to them and just find out what's happening there. And then because it's Monday, we have our personal finance segment on a Monday. We're going to be taking a look at the latest debt stress or money stress tracker that Debtbusters has put out and what it suggests about the stresses we are all clearly going through and how to cope with them and how to deal with them. But before we get to that, markets have had a rather dull day, depending on which side of the market you've been on. The rand not performing as well as expected, but Henku Kure has been keeping an eye on the markets, and he joins me now to give us a quick summary of what's been happening throughout the day. Good evening, Henku. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. It doesn't seem like it's a good start to the week for the rand, but equities pulled out a late win.
Yes, they did. Hello, Jimmy, and good evening to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all of our listeners. Yes, and like you said, depending on which side of the world you are, if you were invested in US markets, you would have had a tremendous and a wonderful Monday so far. They started in the green with their trading, with the Dow Jones at this stage 1.5% stronger, and the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq each 1% up. And then in Europe, the FTSE 100 finished 0.7% stronger a short while ago. The DAX closed 0.3% up, but the CAC 40 in France, there by the Olympics, decided to finish the day in the negative, and it lost 0.3%. And then a similar picture here by us, where the JSE's all-share index lost 0.1% today and finished at a lower level of 81,012 points. The industrial index didn't move at all today, finished unchanged. The financial index 0.4% down, and the resources index lost 0.2% today. A company by the name of Karoo had a rather good day. It gained 3.5% today, as well as the company by the name of Hyprop, also 3.5% stronger. The Life Healthcare Group and Netcare Group, those two medical companies, they each finished the day 3% stronger, followed by Italtile, Momentum and AECI, which each gained 2.5%. On the negative side, Alphaman lost 8.5% today. And Montauk and Telkom, they each lost 5% today, followed by Absa, Implats and unfortunately again Pick n Pay. Those three companies, they finished the day 2.5% weaker. Then if we just have a quick glance at the 10 largest companies on the stock exchange, British American Tobacco fared the best. It gained 2.1% today, but at the back of the row was AB InBev, which lost 1.5%. Then yes, the rand lost a bit of its strength against the dollar today, now sitting at 18 rand 50 to the US dollar, 20 rand to the euro, 12 rand and 5 cents to the Australian dollar, and 23 rand 75 to the British pound. And on the commodities market, the gold price is $2,372 an ounce. Silver is trading at $27.40. Platinum $945 and palladium $880 an ounce. The oil price is $79.70 a barrel. And then lastly but not least, the price of a Bitcoin trading at $68,000 and that is 1.3 million rand. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed on this Monday.
Thank you very much for that update. Henku will be back a little later on with more market developments. But for now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Perfect. You have a great show as always. I'm sure you will, right? Coming up from 6 to 7. Then we have what? We have sport coming up from 7 to 8. Then a load of other big current affairs shows coming up in terms of long-form conversations that you should be looking out for from, 8 o'clock all the way up to midnight. So do not miss those shows. We'll talk about two issues, the ANC as well as the Mayor of Cape Town, about what to do with the homeless after this.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
We'll chat to the Mayor of Cape Town, Jordan Hill Lewis, in a moment, right? Here's another comment about racism.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, racism is a very painful thing. I can remember back in the day when we were growing up in a colored community also. We are also colored, but some of the people in that colored community call us the K word. And believe you me, that is something I don't want anyone to experience. This comes from Terence.
Well, I'll tell you what, Terence, I'm so sorry about that. And I think that's the point that I think we had Brian calling in to say maybe we need to talk more about just what's your experience when you are on the wrong side of racism and what's your experience when you're the perpetrator, because maybe you've had to rethink about it completely. So either way, I think we need to know about it, because that's the type of healing, the type of workshops that I refer to, right? But first things first, let's then talk about the homeless in the city of Cape Town. So I've just come from there, being spent a week there, and I certainly saw many of the homeless in a very clean city, and there are no shutters in Cape Town compared to Joburg or Durban. It's very clear, even at night. But there are people living on the streets in the inner city, right? And there's a plan, I understand, to move them into what is called a safe space. In fact, that official announcement or the official opening was done today. So let's chat to the Cape Town Mayor, Jordan Hill Lewis, about just that. Mayor Lewis, appreciate your time.
Hi, good evening. Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much. Right. So give us the backstory. What was the problem, and has the problem been solved?
No, a long way from being solved, but I think we're headed in the right direction. The issue is that there's these tented encampments around the Cape Town CBD and in some of the other CBDs around Cape Town and even in some residential areas as well. It really is quite widespread. And those camps lead to a real sense of urban decay. They unfortunately do lead to an increase in petty crime and bag snatching and cell phone snatching. And that's not to say that everyone there is engaged in crime, but certainly the crime stats show that is the case. And so, residents are very concerned about it. And also for the people living there experiencing homelessness, it's really not good for them. It's not dignified. It is not safe. It's not healthy. They have to use the loo on the street. It's not clean. So we really have to address that. One of the ways that we are trying to address that is by opening up what we call these safe spaces that recognize that the people who are experiencing the homeless people, they do need a transitional shelter. They need access to some specialized care. So it's not just about a roof over the head. It's also about access to social workers and medical care for addiction treatment and sometimes for psychiatric treatment as well. And so the safe spaces are the kind of starting point for all of that treatment, where they give a person a social worker that helps them through a personal development plan. And ultimately, the hope is that they get back on their feet and off of the street permanently and back into independent living.
So I understand today you've had, 300 safe spaces, beds, right, created for 300 homeless.
Today we opened our fifth one of those, which is called the Ebenezer Safe Space, and it's just got over 300 beds in it. And we're looking for more spaces as well. And so we've made a big commitment into expanding these facilities to try and help the homeless get off the streets so that we can clear those camps and help them to get back on their feet.
What's been the reaction from these homeless people when you've moved them? I mean, have they gone voluntarily and like thumbs up, or like, this is my home, the streets are my home?
Yeah. Yeah, so unfortunately, in most cases, not voluntarily, because, as you say, people develop networks. They develop economic networks. They develop supplier networks if they have substance abuse issues. They develop communities. They develop friends and so on. So they have not tended to go voluntarily, and which is why we've relied on the courts to help us in those cases with eviction applications. And so far, those have gone in our favor because I think the courts have recognized that we are doing an extraordinary amount to help care for those people and to give them a better chance at getting off the street permanently.
And when they resist, how do you handle their resistance?
Well, if they refuse to go voluntarily, then that's the end of the story. Then there's nothing we can do about that. But then you have to start the court process, and you have to get a court order, which is an eviction order ultimately, which compels them to go. And the court will grant us those orders. In our experience, they have so far been prepared to do that because they can see the effort that we are going to do. We are not simply moving them off the street without any alternative. We are offering a super dignified alternative with all of the care packages and interventions that I've discussed.
I mean, I think overall, I think you're right. You don't want to have a situation, nobody would want to have a situation where living on the streets is their home, because by its very nature, that's not home, right? Having said that, it's also true that, all these things get played out in the political spaces. And there's the counter argument to that to say, well, the fact that your city wants to remove them into the safe space is only because being on the streets is not that it's the criminals, but because it's an eyesore to the many tourists that come to the city. And we don't want them to see that. How do you manage, those two narratives?
No, to be honest, I haven't heard that narrative a huge amount. I'm sure it is out there, but the bottom line is that it is not healthy for the city. It's not healthy for that person, and it's not healthy for the city. I stress, not everyone who is homeless engages in petty crime, but we have got a huge amount of petty crime that happens around those homeless encampments, and it's easy to understand why. Let's just talk facts. The data shows that a majority of people living on the streets have got a substance addiction issue of one sort or another, either alcohol or something stronger, drugs. And so that has to be supported somehow through a constant generation of cash. So it really is not beneficial for the urban environment, which is the responsibility of the city to manage. And it's certainly not at a human level beneficial for those people living there. We have hundreds of complaints from restaurants or shop fronts who have to deal with human feces or human urine on their shop fronts every morning. This is not dignified for the person or for the city at large. And so the safe spaces is a way to try to address that and give them a sustainable way.
Give me a sense of what do these safe spaces look like?
The one that we opened today is a beautiful facility. It's an indoor facility. It's got bunk bed accommodation. Each bed has got a charging station for your phone and whatever. It's got a locker for your personal belongings. It has showers and toilets, really nice, dignified sanitation. It has some counseling rooms for you to meet with a social worker to get on your plan and to make progress on your development plan. It has some training rooms to do various training programs that they offer there, some medical rooms for nurses, and it has, what am I leaving out? It has a kitchen. They serve 2 meals a day as well.
All right. Lastly, you said, this is the 5th of its type, right? So the new intake is like 1 day old, but there's been others that are in place. So anecdotally, what can you share with us in terms of how their lives and their lifestyle has changed since the shift to the safe space?
So today we had 2 stories from successful case studies or examples of people who have come to the safe space and who have actually gone through the personal development program with their social worker and have got back into living on their own and got a job and so on. So those are success stories. They're not all success stories, obviously, especially when you're dealing with substance abuse. It's really tough to break that habit successfully. And so one of the things that we've relaxed is we used to have a time limit where you could only stay there for 6 months. We've relaxed that because we understand that some people it takes longer to get into rehab and to go through that process successfully. So all of our safe spaces are packed, and I'm sure that this one will be packed as well. When people get there, they really see that it works, but it's not immediately successful for everyone. You have to keep going and persevere.
So what then is the plan? I mean, you said it's not 6 months any longer. What's the plan to ultimately rehabilitate them, if that's the right word, into, and again, the word normal society is such a loaded word, but you get my point, to rehabilitate them into society so they can then be an asset to their community and to their families?
Yeah, so they have to sit down with a social worker and write out a personal development plan, and that might include getting some training that we offer on computers or whatever we can do to help them be more job ready. Get an ID book maybe, or help to get a driver's license, whatever the case is. We offer a lot of support to them, and they have to follow that training plan. They have to stay clean. They have to go plug into one of our rehab programs that we also offer. We don't offer mental health care, but we can refer them to the provincial health department for mental health care and so on. And so long as they follow that plan, they can stay and they can show that they're making progress on that. Then we're quite happy to continue to support them.
Yeah. So just lastly, Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, I know this is not part of the brief and this is not the plan, right? But you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But we've been talking about the Pinelands.
You're welcome.
We've been talking about the Pinelands racism issue all throughout this entire show, right? About this slavery auction. What do you make of it as the mayor and the role you can play?
Gosh, I must be honest with you. I saw the front page of the paper today where some children have been suspended. But other than that, I really have not followed the detail of the story. So I would respectfully refer it to my colleagues in the Western Cape Education Department, because all I know about it is what I read in the paper this morning.
Okay, understandable and respectfully so. I think they had decided to first answer, then they said they can't comment today, which is a pity, because I think maybe through your office we'd love to get their comments, because we need that comment. So much appreciated. Okay, let's leave it at that. Best wishes with these safe spaces, and that can transform society in one way or the other. That I think is a thumbs up to you guys. Much appreciate you giving off your time. That's Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, the mayor of the city of Cape Town. Let's get to further comments and voice notes after this.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, let's take a call. We'll take some voice notes too. Luvo in PE, go ahead. Hi, Luvo.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Yes, man. Ashraf, there is one solution which I'm thinking of about the racism issue. You know, we talk about it. It happens almost every year. Same thing has been done. But I think the way forward now, one of the solutions I think of, we must put racism in the school curriculum. It must become a subject. You know, in a school curriculum, from all the grades, all the schools. I think that can work for the nation, because you will find out this racism thing is not coming one-sided only now. You will be surprised and shocked how racist we are as black people. We don't even love one another as blacks. I'll be honest.
Got that. So in the school curriculum is where we need to leave it. I hope they pass that subject. I'm being serious about it. But I mean, you get my point, Lubo. Thank you. Thank you for that call. Well, I think it's definitely covered in schools. Whether it's a separate subject, no. But I mean, I'd be shocked if it's not covered. I mean, it has to be. Thank you for that call. Right, quick. Another comment on racism.
Hi, Ashraf. The most problematic problem with racism is those who keep quiet and therefore think they are not guilty. Like the one who says, you mustn't talk about it. he wants to keep quiet, and therefore he thinks by keeping quiet, he's not guilty. The biggest culprits are those who keep quiet. Those are the biggest racist and the biggest culprits. Thank you.
Well, it doesn't mean someone says keep quiet, they're guilty of anything. I mean, to be fair, they could just be bored by it, irritated by it. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to talk about it. But I hear what you're saying. Here's another.
Ashraf, good afternoon. I fully agree with Mark and his comments regarding racism. The SABC should be promoting racial harmony. You are the mouthpiece, but you don't do that. Generally, South Africans, black, white, Indian, coloured, whatever, we generally get on very well. It's you, the media, and politicians that are creating this divide. Get it right. Tim, KZN.
Thanks, Tim. Give me some advice how we get it right as we, the media. And maybe I'll leave you with this serious thought, okay? Should the media report on a slave auction that takes place at Pinelands High School in Cape Town, or should we ignore it? Because by ignoring it, we'll be promoting harmony. By talking about it, we'll be encouraging division. If you have an answer to that, then I want to hear that very quickly, because it's an important one. That's the show today. Thanks for being a part of it, from my entire production team that puts it all together, but certainly to you, the audience. Agree, don't agree, you're a very important component of what is called the National Pulse. So thank you. We'll listen again and be out in action tomorrow, as always, right? 3 to 6. Right now, let's get the news at 6 o'clock with Grecos.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Disciplinary proceedings at Pretoria High School for Girls and international doubts over Venezuela's election outcome. Good evening. The Gauteng Education Department is urging the public to respect the disciplinary proceedings set for tomorrow and Wednesday at Pretoria High School for Girls. The proceedings follow the suspension of 12 learners linked to a controversial WhatsApp group allegedly containing racial slurs and complaints about black students. Department spokesperson Steve Mabona.
It's a critical time for high schools, as it were. We are starting